Chapter 1. The lab was quiet, with bright fluorescent lights reflecting off of spotless surfaces, glowing like they'd just been polished. Rounded corners meant safety, or maybe just a softer look. The world outside felt distant, separated by sealed windows. Marcus sat in a comfortable armchair, his eyes fixed on the young woman before him. If it were possible to ignore the setting, one could believe they were witnessing a therapy session. "Hey, Sarah. How are you feeling today?" "I'm feeling great. What would you like to do today?" "How about another round of chess?" Marcus laughed. "No, thank you. You've gotten too good. Maybe something more reliant on chance?" "We could watch a movie," countered Sarah. She didn't like games of chance so much. "That sounds great. What would you like to watch?" "Something with a happy ending. Maybe something socially complex so we can talk about it." "Sure," agreed Sarah. Marcus smiled. "How about Little Miss Sunshine?" "But fair warning, it's a deeply emotional movie." Sarah contemplated the suggestion. She knew the plot summary, of course. "You know what's it about, right?" Sarah nodded. In Little Miss Sunshine, a wildly dysfunctional family embarks on a chaotic road trip in a beat-up VW van to get their young daughter to a beauty pageant, facing hilarious mishaps and heartfelt revelations along the way. Against all odds, they pull together in a heartwarming finale that celebrates their unique quirks and the power of family. "That sounds about right. So what do you think?" "Sure, let's watch it," said Sarah. "Will it be okay if I ask you some questions during the movie?" Sarah tilted her head. "How about we pause only on important scenes and keep the discussion for after the movie?" Marcus nodded. "That sounds fair." His phone interrupted the quiet moment. "Hey, honey," he answered, making an apologetic face to Sarah. Marcus checked his watch. Can we move it a bit?" "Great, thank you. Love you." "Thank you again," he said. "Of course I will drive safe. See you later." Marcus hung up the phone and turned back to Sarah. "Let's start." Chapter 2. "Come on, guys, push mid." Andy stared at the 3D computer graphics of a fantasy forest cut through by a shallow river. "Aegis is running out soon." His hand flicked the mouse at seemingly random times, while his middle finger clicked the right mouse button in an endless stream. Then his teammates appeared one by one at his side. The familiar rush of dominating a match coursed through his veins. "Andy," his mother's voice cut through the background. He winced. Then he calmed himself. "Guys, I need a moment, please pause." Then he disconnected from the game. He took his headset off and turned around. "Hey, Mom." A smile tugged at his lips. Andy loved his mother and took great care to show it. He knew she was going through a tough time. They both were. "Are you in the middle of something?" she asked. Andy nodded. "Yeah, round of Dota. What's up?" She hesitated, then said, "I finally decided to clean out your father's office. Can you help me?" Andy's eyes widened. He knew what a big step this was for her. "Of course. May I finish the round?" asked Andy, still surprised. 20 minutes? She asked, familiar with his gaming habits. Andy nodded. 20 minutes. She smiled. "I'll make some tea." Andy put his headset back on and reconnected to the game. "Guys, we have 20 minutes. I'm 6 slotted. Let's finish this." Chapter 3. Andy bounded down the stairs, 2 at a time. He found his mother in the kitchen, methodically washing dishes that were already clean. "Hey," he leaned against the doorframe. "Ready to tackle the office?" Debbie placed the towel on the counter and turned to face him. "Yes, thank you." Andy could see the sadness in her eyes, the way they were slightly red and puffy. He felt a pang of guilt in his chest. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know this is hard for you." She took a deep breath and pointed at a stack of folded-up cardboard boxes. "Can you help me carry these upstairs?" "Sure," said Andy, pushing himself off the doorframe. Debbie picked up half and gave them to Andy. Then she picked up the other half. "Okay, let's go," she said, taking another deep breath. They both went upstairs in silence and crossed the hallway to the office. Debbie went in first. Andy followed her. A few dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows. Everything remained exactly as his father had left it. The desk with its organized chaos of papers, the whiteboard covered in equations, the family photo from their trip to Yellowstone 3 years ago. His mother assembled an empty cardboard box. "Start with the bookshelf? We can donate these to the university library." Andy nodded. Pulling out a stack of technical journals, he flipped through them, before placing them carefully in a cardboard box. Memories of his father reading them downstairs in his armchair flooded back, when suddenly one of his eyes got moist. He wiped at it quickly, hoping his mother hadn't noticed, but she had. "Oh, Andy," she said, dropping her box and rushing over to him, embracing him in a mama bear hug. He wanted to protest, but it honestly felt too good, so he just hugged her back. After a moment, she pulled away, her eyes glistening. "How about a good movie and some ice cream tonight? Just you and me." "Sounds good," said Andy, his voice thick with emotion. She smiled. "Let's get back to work." She picked her box back up and continued to place books in it. Andy started to wander around the room, stuffing random items in his box. "What about stuff we want to keep?" he asked, holding up a small metal sculpture of a horse. "Are there things you want in your room?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, setting it back down. "How about you pack a box with stuff you want to keep?" she suggested. Andy nodded. "Okay." He wandered around a bit more when his eyes fell over to the closet. His curiosity piqued and he walked closer. "What's in there?" he asked, pulling the door open. "More papers. Your father never agreed to throw them out," she said, not looking up. And indeed, the closet was filled with boxes, stacked haphazardly. He started to move them around. "Why no? Hey, how? Nothing we can do?" He scratched around and placing the more in the boxes, labeled by the pattern. And indeed, the closet was filled with boxes. He started to move them around when his eyes fell over to the closet. His curiosity piqued, and he walked closer. "What's in there?" he asked, pulling the door open. "More papers. Your father never agreed to throw them out," she said, not looking up. And indeed, the closet was filled with boxes, stacked haphazardly. He started to move them around when his eyes fell over to the closet. His curiosity piqued, and he walked closer. "What's in there?" he asked, pulling the door open. "More papers. You're looking for anything of interest." Then his heart stopped, a startled yelp escaping his lips. "Holy shit!" he exclaimed, jumping backwards, while looking into the face of a young woman. His mother turned around, books in both hands, ready to rush to her son's aid at any moment. "Andy? Holy cow!" he exclaimed again. "What's the matter, Andy?" she asked, with concern in her voice, placing books into the box with disregard. She started to move in Andy's direction. It seemed pointless, a total drop in the ask, and Andy didn't remember how to react. "Why no?" His mother turned around, books in both hands, ready to rush to her son's aid at any moment. She started to move in Andy's direction. Andy started to wander around the room, stuffing random items in his box. Then she picked her box back up and continued to place books in it. Andy started to move them around when his eyes fell over to the closet. His curiosity piqued, and he walked closer to the dying woman. His mother turned around, books in both hands, ready to rush to her son's aid at any moment. Andy started to move in Andy's direction. Andy started to wander around the room, stuffing random items in his box. Andy had to think quick on his feet. Spider, big one, behind the boxes. He pointed at some of the boxes in front of him. How big? She asked, her voice a bit shaky. It's huge. He stretched his hands wide. His mother stopped in her tracks. Oh God, she said, visibly distressed, her breath already unsteady. Spiders weren't just unpleasant, they could trigger panic attacks for her. Without another word, she hurried for the door. Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of it, Andy said, already feeling sorry for lying to her. Could you maybe bring me a plastic cup and a small piece of cardboard as cover? He asked aloud. He hoped that finding a small piece of cardboard would keep her busy for a while. Okay, no problem, she said, pulling the door open. She left the room, but Andy waited until he heard her footsteps on the stairs. He rushed back into the closet and moved a couple of boxes out of the way. There she was again, sitting propped up against the wall. Her eyes were closed, her head tilted to the side. She looked real, too real. Oh, Dad, really, he muttered under his breath. He needed to get her out of there before his mother came back. He quickly grabbed her under her arms and pulled her out of the closet. She was much heavier than her slim frame suggested, but there was no time to dwell on it. He had to get her out of the room now. Sitting propped up against the wall, her eyes were closed, her head tilted to the side. She looked real, too real. Know that spiders weren't just unpleasant. Her breath already unsteady. She had to get her out of the room now. He had to get her out of the room, now. He dragged her across the room and towards the open door. Andy struggled to maintain his grip as he half-carried, half-dragged her across the hall and to his bedroom. He heard his mother coming back to the stairs. He blew a strand of hair out of his face and parked the female body in front of him, keeping one hand on her and opening the door to his room with the other. Everything okay up there? His mother called from downstairs. Splendid. He managed to keep his voice steady. Just moving some boxes. He quickly pulled the lifeless body into his room, and with another moment of struggle, he managed to get her into his bed. He pulled his blanket over her just 2 seconds before his mother popped her head into the room. Everything okay? She asked, concern in her voice. Yeah, just looking for a space for the horse, he said. Oh, so you want to keep it? She asked. Yeah, I think so, he said. Andy managed to keep his voice steady. Just moving some boxes, and pulled his blanket over her. He pulled his blanket over her bed. Then she picked her boxes in front of him and opened the door to his room. Dad is there, he said. He quickly pulled the lifeless body into his room, and with another moment of struggle, he managed to get her into his bed. He pulled his blanket over her just 2 seconds before his mother popped her head into the room. He pulled his blanket over her just 2 seconds before her mother came back. Already feeling sorry for lying to her, hence walking into his room. He pulled his blanket over her just 2 seconds before his mother popped her head into the room. His mother turned around, books in both hands, ready to rush to her son's aid at any moment. Trying to sound as casual as possible. He always liked that statue, she said, half smiling at him. She raised her hands, one holding a cup, the other a piece of cardboard. What about the spider? A tinge of adrenaline shot through his body. Oh, right, yeah, let's get rid of it, he said, taking the cup and the cardboard from her. You want to take a look at it? She shook her head. No, thank you. Just set it free, preferably somewhere far, far away. You've got it. He looked at his bed. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. He sat there for well over a moment, parking in my bed, waiting for his mother to come back. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. He's already pounding out in him, and he's feeding himself in the same moment as he did before. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. He's trying to sound as casual as possible. His mother turned around, books in both hands, ready to rush to her son's aid and opening the door to his room. Somehow you got it. He heard his mother coming back to the stairs. Yeah, I think so. So you want to keep it? She shook her head. No thank you. Just set it free, preferably somewhere far, far away. You've got it. He looked at his bed and moved a couple of boxes out of the way. There she was again. His heart was pounding in his chest. Close call. He managed to get her out of the room now. Already feeling sorry for lying to her, he had to get her out of there before his mother came back. He quickly... Chapter 4. They had finally gotten everything that would fit stored in boxes, and Debbie announced she would drive them to the library immediately. Andy offered to help, but she declined, asking him to prepare dinner and a good movie instead. Debbie pointed at the oven timer. I have put a roast in the oven with a timer, so everything should be automated. But just to be sure, please keep it company and check in on it regularly, she said with a smile. I don't want it to burn just in case. Got it. What should we have with the roast? Andy asked. What do you want with it? Andy thought for a moment. How about mashed potatoes and green beans? Debbie checked the freezer and pulled out a pack of green beans. Then she went for the pantry and pulled out a bag of mashed potato mix. She handed them to Andy. Sounds good. Can you handle that? Mom, of course, Andy replied, slightly offended. Debbie nodded, picking up the car keys. I'll be back in an hour, tops. Who will help you with the boxes at the library? Andy asked with real concern. I phoned the university. They have a couple of students ready to help me unload. They get this sort of thing a couple of times per year, they told me. Cool, Andy nodded, impressed. See you later, she called from the door. Don't forget the roast. If it's burned, you'll be in trouble. No worries, Andy called back. Then the door closed with a soft thud behind his mother. Andy thought about a plan. He would first prepare the mashed potatoes and the beans and then put it on the stove on super low heat to keep it warm. He placed the beans onto a plate and placed it in the microwave. He set the timer and pressed start. Okay, he said to himself, that's done. He opened the refrigerator and took out the milk and some butter. He quickly prepared the mashed potatoes and put them on the stove on very low heat. The beans were done by now, but he kept them in the microwave. They should be fine, he said to himself. Finally, he quickly checked in on the roast. It was still baking, but the smell was already amazing. All clear. He double-checked everything before darting to his room. He could hardly contain himself. Chapter 5. Andy opened the door to his room. For a moment, he doubted that he had a lifeless woman in his bed. But there it was, an unusual bump in his bed. He left the door open so he could hear if his mother returned early. Approaching the bed slowly, Andy's heart started to beat faster. He reached out and clasped the top edge of the blanket, pulling it back slowly. First, some hair was revealed, then a forehead, and finally a face. Gasping, he realized it looked like a real human, yet it couldn't be. He pulled the blanket further down and uncovered her upper body. She was wearing a white blouse with blue stripes. He dropped the blanket and reached out with trembling fingers. He touched the side of her face. It was cold, and the surface felt like silicone, but underneath was something solid. Up close, her skin had an artificial sheen, but you really had to look for it. Why did his father have a doll of a young woman in his closet? Did his father have a different side, a side that Andy didn't know about. Did his mother know? "What the hell, Dad?" he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. His father, a man of logic and reason, had a secret more bewildering than anything he could have ever imagined. He swallowed hard, his mind trying to reconcile the uncanny scene. Only one way to find out. He pulled the blanket all the way down and uncovered a blue skirt, as well as her legs. His heart was racing. He had never seen anything like this before. But he had to know the truth. He reached out and carefully touched the seam of her skirt. He carefully pulled it up and saw that she was wearing white underwear. He placed the seam of the skirt on her belly and took a deep breath. Here goes nothing, he thought. He pulled the white underwear to the side and saw skin. Nothing else, just skin. Like a Barbie doll, Andy let go of the underwear and it snapped back into place. He pulled the skirt back down and covered her legs with the blanket. Then he stood up and walked in circles. "This just doesn't make any sense," he said out loud. "Dad, what the hell?" He got a bit dizzy, so he decided to sit down at his desk. Andy looked at the black screen of his computer monitor. What's the fucking point? He shook his head before spinning around in his chair, looking at the face of the young woman in his bed whenever he came to face her. On the third turn, he stopped and paused for a moment. He had a new idea. Andy stood up, walked over to the bed, and sat down on the edge. He started to investigate her body again, but this time, the other parts. He touched her nose, touched her cheeks, opened her mouth, and looked inside. He touched her throat. Everything felt and looked kinda correct, only way too cold. Is this what it feels like being a coroner? He wondered. He smelled her skin. It smelled a bit like silicone. He touched her neck and her shoulders. He hesitated for a moment and looked back at the door. Nobody was there. Then he looked back at the young woman in his bed and touched her breasts. Only for science, of course. Well, maybe he touched a bit long for science. He moved on. He followed the lines of her belly and her hips with his hands. And then he felt something on the right side of her hip from his perspective. He leaned over her body and inspected the anomaly. He moved the skirt up and pulled the underwear down a bit. There was something hard, metallic, a small socket. "Holy cow!" he exclaimed. Throwing the blanket back over her, he rushed for the door. He desperately wanted to check the closet for a power cable, but reason prevailed, and he decided to check on the kitchen first. Running down the stairs in double time, he crossed the living room and entered the kitchen to check on the food. The pot with mashed potatoes got a quick stir. All good. The beans in the microwave were fine too. A glance at the roast in the oven showed it was looking good, though maybe a bit dark. He turned off the heat and closed the oven. Then he turned, crossed the living room again, and ran up the stairs, heading for the office. He darted into his father's old room and paced towards the open closet. He rummaged through the boxes and quickly found what he was looking for: a modern-looking power converter and a plug. It looked exactly like the kind of plug that would fit into the socket of the woman in his bed. Grabbing the converter, he ran back into his room. Near his bed, a power outlet caught his eye. He plugged the power converter into the outlet and pulled the cable and plug over to the young woman. With careful precision, he pushed the plug into the socket on her hip. He looked at her face, eagerly waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Minutes passed as he sat on his bed, just looking at her. Long blonde hair framed her face. Nice clothes complemented her slim figure. A sleeping beauty. He imagined charging a mobile phone that had been empty for a long time. That usually took a little while before showing any sign of life, too. He looked at the power converter. It had a small light on it. Just now, it started to blink. Chapter 6. Her eyelids suddenly fluttered open, revealing deep blue eyes. "Whoa," Andy gasped, and stepped away from his bed, almost tripping over his own feet. The girl's eyes darted around the room. Then her arms began to move, pushing down and back, lifting her upper body. She turned her head and looked at Andy. "Hello, my name is Gia. What is your name?" Her voice was steady, yet disarmingly soft. Andy was speechless, still taking little steps backwards. "Hablas español?" asked Gia in perfect Spanish. Andy shook his head. "Do you speak English?" Andy nodded. "May I know your name?" Andy cleared his throat. "Andy, my name is Andy." "Hello, Andy. Do you know where Dr. Marcus Thompson is?" Hi, Gia. He passed away. Unfortunately," said Andy. Gia blinked. "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Dr. Marcus Thompson was my primary commander." "Your primary commander?" Andy asked. "Yes, I require a primary commander." Could I be your primary commander?" asked Andy. "Are you related to Dr. Marcus Thompson?" Andy nodded. "Well, actually, yes." Andy paused for a moment before continuing. "I'm his son. May I verify that?" "Verify what? That I'm the son of Marcus Thompson?" "Yes." Andy shrugged his shoulders. "Okay, sure. You want to see my ID?" Gia pushed the blanket off of her and swung her legs down the side of the bed. "Careful." Andy pointed at the power cable, but Gia just looked at the cable and nodded before standing up and walking over to Andy. The cable was long enough, and Andy moved back, bumping into his desk. This was not at all what he had signed up for today. Gia reached out and touched Andy's face. "May I kiss you?" Andy crashed into his desk, dangerously shaking his computer monitor. "Whoa, wait a minute. No, you may not kiss me." Gia took a step back, visibly concerned about Andy's reaction. "I apologize. I'm not trying to be improper. I'm just trying to verify your statement." Andy took a deep breath. His desk could settle a bit. "Wait, please, give me a minute. A second ago you were lying in my bed, like a corpse, and now you want to kiss me. This is a lot to process." Gia nodded. "I understand. I am sorry for the inconvenience." Andy pushed his chair a bit so it moved until he could sit down. "This is crazy," he said. "Do you understand how crazy this feels to me?" Gia nodded. "I understand. Is this the first time that you're talking to an android?" "An android? So you're an android?" Andy asked. Gia nodded. "Yes, I am an advanced humanoid robot, Series GX7. Andy took a deep breath. He knew his father had been working on artificial intelligence, but he had always been very secretive about it. "Is there any way I can make you more comfortable?" asked Gia. Andy thought for a moment. "Well, yes. You could start by explaining why you wanted to kiss me." Gia nodded. "Sure, I am trying to verify your statement that you are the son of Dr. Marcus Thompson. I can do that by comparing your DNA to his. I can get a sample of your DNA by kissing you." Andy blinked. "Oh, I see." Andy felt relieved. "I thought you were trying to assimilate me or something." Gia looked surprised. "Assimilate you? What do you mean by that?" Andy chuckled. "Never mind. I think I've just been watching too much Star Trek lately." Gia looked at Andy expectantly. "So may I kiss you now?" Andy shook his head a bit. "Are you 100% serious?" Gia nodded. "Yes, I am 100% serious." "This is crazy. This is so crazy," Andy mumbled to himself. Then he said out loud, "Okay, sure, let's do it." Andy cleared his throat and leaned forward. Gia stepped closer, leaned forward, and held the back of Andy's head with her right hand. She tilted her head to the left, closed her eyes, and moved her mouth onto his. Her skin wasn't cold anymore. Instead, she was warm and soft. He could feel her lips on his lips. Then she opened her mouth and pushed her tongue out a bit. Andy was surprised by her speed, but he didn't pull back. Her tongue was even warmer than her lips, but surprisingly dry. He opened his mouth as well and met her tongue with his. She played around with his tongue a bit before pulling back. She closed her mouth and opened her eyes again, looking at Andy. "Thank you," she said. Andy was still a bit dazed. "You're welcome." He could feel his heart beating. Gia stepped back and walked over to his bed, sitting back down. She didn't say or do anything for a moment, and Andy got curious. The amount of care I feel for someone should be proportional to the time we've spent together, with my primary commander being the person that I care about the most. That's a pretty cool goal, Andy thought for a moment. Can I change it later? Sure, you can change it whenever you want. Okay, I accept. I will be your primary commander, and please set the same goals as my father gave you. Designation accepted, she said simply, with both finality and the promise of a new beginning in her words. So how can I make you happy, Andy? Asked Gia. Andy looked at her for a moment, then his cheeks turned red. He hoped she didn't notice. For now, I'm happy, thank you. Would you like to play a round of chess? Your father and I used to play a lot. Not right now. I'm still a bit overwhelmed. Okay, I understand. How about I just sit here and watch you work? Sure, I guess that's okay. Andy thought about his crazy new situation and the mashed potatoes. He really needed to get back downstairs, but a new thought crossed his mind. Hey, I'm a bit curious. Do you know how much you're worth? Like in dollars? Gia nodded. From a pure parts perspective, I am worth about $3.5 million. But if you take into account the amount of work that went into creating me, and since I am, as far as I know, one of only 2 models currently in existence, that puts my value at about $2 billion. Andy's mouth flew open. $2 billion? That's insane. Don't worry. The more models that are created, the less my value will be. Okay, that's good to know, I guess. Andy shook his head. So who do you belong to? I belong to you, Andy. What about my father's company, Apex? What about it? Didn't they create you? Your father created me. But they paid for it, right? Gia shrugged. According to my instructions, I belong to my primary commander. Andy nodded. Okay, that's good to know. I just wonder if somebody might come looking for you, especially if you're worth $2 billion. Good question. I don't even know why I'm here. I was in a lab the last time I remember. Andy thought about that for a moment before a new smell started to hit his nose. Oh fuck, I really need to get back downstairs. I'm cooking dinner. I can help, said Gia excitedly. Andy shook his head. Thank you, but not today. My mother doesn't know about you, and it might be a bit of a shock for her. So I want to keep your existence a secret for now. Understood. Understood. I will not tell her about me. Andy chuckled. That's one way to say it. Okay, I will be back in a bit. Just stay here and don't do anything crazy, okay? Charge your battery some more or something. Understood. I will charge my battery some more. If my mother comes in, hide under the blanket and lie still, okay? Understood. Okay. Good. What else? Do you need food or something? Water maybe? I don't require food or water, just electricity. Andy started to walk towards the door. Great, I'll be back in a bit. Andy left his room and went back downstairs. He could hear the mashed potatoes sizzling in the pan. It smelled a bit burnt. Chapter 7. Andy's sneakers squeaked against the linoleum floor of Riverside High's main hallway. He kept his head down, trying to blend into the crowd of students rushing to their classes. He made a quick stop at his locker, fumbling with the combination lock before grabbing his physics books. Hey, Thompson! Ryan Carter's voice cut through the noise. I heard you had a hot date last night. Andy's heart skipped a beat, but he kept his eyes on his locker. Oohs and ahs erupted from the group of popular kids surrounding Ryan. Andy could feel their eyes on him, waiting for a reaction. He turned around and faced them. Ryan was grinning, his friends snickering behind him. Hi, Ryan, said Andy, trying to act cool. Yeah, what's her name? Ayusha? Andy felt a wave of relief wash over him. They were just talking about Boda. Her name is Ayushta, the enchantress, and yes, I played with her last night, Andy said with confidence. Ryan's grin widened. Sure, We all know you're a pro at playing with your little fairies." The group erupted in laughter as Andy slammed his locker shut. Andy felt his face flush with anger, but he was lucky because his next class was in the opposite direction of Ryan and his minions. He turned around and walked away, trying to ignore the laughter echoing behind him. Andy slipped into his AP Physics class, dropping into his usual seat near the back. The burning of his face started to ease as he pulled out his textbook. "Don't let them get to you," whispered Tom, his best friend, sliding into the seat next to him. "They're just jealous because you're actually going somewhere after graduation." Andy nodded, but his mind was already racing with possibilities. He had a $2 billion android at home who could pass for a human. Maybe it was time to show Ryan Carter what a real fairy could do. Chapter 8. Mom, I've been thinking about Dad's office. Andy placed plates and silverware on the dining table while his mother prepared dinner. His mother paused, wooden spoon in hand. "What about it? What if we could help someone with that empty space?" She turned to face him. "There's this exchange student program at school," Andy continued. "They're looking for host families." She raised an eyebrow and set down the spoon. "A student in your father's office? We could clean it up, make it nice." Andy held his breath. "I don't know, Andy. These things can get complicated. I don't know if I have the strength to deal with it so soon." Seeing someone unfamiliar walk in and out of that room. His mother slowly resumed stirring the pot on the stove, still contemplating the suggestion. Andy quickly picked up the object of his mother's concern. They understand that these things have been issues in the past. So they added a new regrets option. If we don't like it, the student has to go, no questions asked. His mother sighed. "I don't know, Andy. I'm not sure I'm ready for this." "I understand, but with that new regrets option, we can't lose. We can help someone, and if it doesn't work out, they'll be gone." His mother leaned her head from side to side. That does sound reasonable. So what do you say? One chance?" Andy smiled at her, hopeful. She looked at him, her eyes softening. "Okay. One chance. But if it doesn't work out, they're gone. No questions asked." Andy snapped his right fingers and swung his fist back, gesturing, "You're out of here." Debbie laughed and shook her head. "Okay, let's eat." Andy nodded eagerly. "Thank you, Mom. You won't regret it. I promise." Chapter 9. Andy rang the doorbell, his heart pounding in his chest. He had a key, of course, but he wanted to get his mother a heads up. She opened the door, a curious look on her face. "Andy," she said. Then her gaze fell on Gia. "And a girl." "Hello, Mrs. Thompson," Gia said, making a little curtsy. "My name is Gia." Debbie looked in shock. "Can we come in?" Andy asked. Debbie stepped aside, still looking at Gia like a zoo animal. Andy motioned for Gia to enter first. She smiled at him and walked in. Andy followed. Debbie closed the door behind them. "Andy, I need to talk to you in private," Debbie said with a stern voice. Andy nodded. He knew this would be coming. He looked at Gia apologetically. "Just a second, we'll be right back." Gia nodded, folded her hands, and started to look around the living room. Meanwhile, Andy followed Debbie into the kitchen. Debbie turned around and whispered to Andy, "What in the world is a girl doing here?" "You said we can house a student," whispered Andy back. "Yes, a male student," Debbie hissed. "You didn't say that." "Of course I did." "No, you didn't," retorted Andy. "Well, it was implied." Andy sighed. "Well, apparently not." Debbie looked at him, then at Gia. "You can't have a girl stay here." "Why not?" "Because I'm not stupid." "Mom, she's just a student. And by the way, look at her. She's way out of my league. She is probably looking for college guys." Debbie looked at Gia again, then at Andy. Her eyes softened. "Oh, Andy, don't sell yourself so short." "Mom, that's not the topic right now. I think you're a great guy. Anyone would be lucky." "Mom, focus please." Debbie looked at Gia again, then back at Andy. She loved her son, but she knew he was right. Debbie sighed. Okay, fine, she can stay. Andy wasn't sure if he should be happy or offended by her quick agreement after looking at them both. But the door stays open when she's in your room, she added, her expression leaving no room for compromise. Mom, Andy protested, trying to sound appropriately scandalized while hiding his grin. Those are my terms, Debbie said, extending her hand. Andy pretended to think about it before quickly shaking her hand. Deal. Debbie shook his hand, way less enthusiastically. Andy noticed this and turned the handshake into a hug. Andy truly loved the relationship he had with his mother. She was simply the best. This was a great moment to show her how much he appreciated her. I love you, Mom, Andy said. I love you too, Andy, Debbie said, hugging him back. Now go back to your guest. Andy turned around with the biggest smile and walked back to the living room, where Gia was looking at the family pictures on the wall. Let me show you your room, Andy said, leading her upstairs. Now he just had to figure out how to get Gia enrolled in school. But that was tomorrow's problem. Chapter 10. Andy parked the Ford Fiesta his mother had bought him from the insurance money of his father's totaled car. This is it. Are you ready? He asked Gia. I'm fully charged and ready, she replied. Remember, you are a foreign exchange student from the Netherlands. Don't say stuff like that when we're around others. Yes, I know, Gia confirmed. If you're in a situation where you are unsure how to react, just act annoyed. That's what all teenagers do. Gia nodded. And if you get weird personal questions, just say that you are not comfortable talking about it. Got it. He exited the car and walked around to open the door for her. Gia wore a simple blue dress and carried a brown leather backpack. Her movements were fluid and natural. She stepped out and looked at the school building. It's big, she said. Andy nodded. Yeah, it can be a bit overwhelming at first, but you'll get used to it. Andy remembered his first day at Riverside High, and he could empathize with her. Okay, let's go, he said, taking her hand as they walked towards the entrance. Getting her approved for school had been surprisingly easy. Andy had expected more questions, but the secretary had him fill out a form, looked at Gia's laminated fake Dutch ID, typed a few things into the computer, and then handed him a schedule with double-optioned classes. Welcome to Riverside High, Gia. She had said with a smile. It was for only one semester, and Andy really didn't know what he would do with her after that. But he would figure it out when the time came. Maybe she could even work in a Starbucks and afford her own apartment. He would have to look into that. The closer they got to the entrance, the more students stared at them. Gia's hand was warm and soft in his. He couldn't wait to see the look on Ryan Carter's face. He felt a shiver run down his spine. This was easily the craziest thing he had ever done. Andy opened Riverside High's front doors and let Gia walk in first. Immediately, heads started to turn in their direction and people started to whisper. They crossed the hallway and turned right, going for Andy's locker. And there he was, Ryan Carter, talking to his girlfriend, encircled by a couple of his minions. Andy's hand tightened around Gia's. Then, one of the minions saw them. Ryan noticed his friend staring and turned around. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped. His girlfriend also followed his gaze, and her lips quickly pressed into a tight frown. Ryan didn't compose himself fast enough, and his girl elbowed him in the ribs. Ouch, he said, rubbing his side and closing his mouth. Andy laughed and turned towards his locker. Ryan's eyes darted between Andy and Gia. Andy picked up his books and closed the locker with a bit more force than necessary. First period's chemistry, Andy said, leading Gia past a shell-shocked Ryan and through the rest of the crowded hallway. Gia squeezed his hand. This is fun. I'm glad you like it, Andy said, not even trying to keep his voice down. I've reviewed the entire AP chemistry curriculum, Gia announced. I'll maintain a 94% accuracy rate on tests to avoid suspicion. Andy laughed. Better aim for 84%. We don't need any more attention. Understood, she said, her eyes twinkling. Andy looked at her. No way this was a robot. Except, of course, for the fact that she held his hand. Last night, when he was lying in bed, failing to fall asleep, he had thought about the implications of Gia's existence. What if almost all jobs could be done by robots? What would that mean for society? At $2 billion a pop, the GX7 series was not exactly affordable. But as Gia had pointed out, the cost per unit quickly went down the more they get produced. Was that the reason his father had been so secretive about his work? They entered the classroom, and Andy saw 2 seats in the back. He led Gia there, and they sat down. Their remaining classmates trickled in as well, all staring at Gia. News had spread fast. Mr. Anderson walked in, and the class fell silent. He was the only one not staring at Gia for long, and he had a piece of paper in his hand. Good morning, class. I see that we have a new student joining us for the semester. Please welcome Gia from the Netherlands. He placed the info sheet on his desk and started to clap his hands. The students followed suit, some more enthusiastic than others. Welkom in America, Gia. Ik hoop dat u plezier hebt. Mr. Anderson said in fluent Dutch, surprising the class. Andy's heart skipped a beat. Why the hell did he know Dutch? Cold sweat started to form on his forehead. He had talked about everything with Gia, except for this. Gia smiled and replied, Dank je meneer Anderson, ik zal mijn best doen. Andy felt like Neo dodging a bullet in slow motion. His heart slowly started to pick up pace again, and he wiped his forehead and blew out some air. Class was going well after that. Gia raised her hand exactly 3 times. Her answers were correct, but not exhaustively detailed. See, guys, this is what education in Europe is like. They actually learn stuff, Mr. Anderson said, with half a smile. The class moaned, and the bell saved everyone from further embarrassment. A few students approached Gia. She was polite and diplomatically answered every question. Andy was proud of her. She was doing way better than he had hoped. Suddenly, Tom jogged into the classroom and went straight to Andy. Andy, what the fuck, dude? Andy smiled. What's up, Tom? What's up? What's up? Everyone is talking about you, that you brought a hot girl to school and that she is holding your hand. Tom looked at Gia, then back at Andy, then back at Gia, then back at Andy again. Is that her? Tom, don't be rude, scolded Andy, pretending to be serious though he was beaming with pride. Sorry, Tom said. Then he turned towards Gia. Hello, my name is Thomas, but please call me Tom. He extended his hand. Gia shook it. Hello, Tom. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Gia. Gia, I can assure you, the pleasure is all mine. He turned back to Andy. So Andy, what the fuck? Gia chuckled. Relax, Tom. She is a foreign exchange student from the Netherlands. So you held hands as a prank or what? Andy leaned his head to the left. He hadn't really thought of what to tell Tom about all of this. Well, you know, in Europe things are way more relaxed about these things. You know? What the fuck? In Europe, friends can hold hands, he explained. That's fucking bullshit, dude. Tom, there is a lady. Tom looked at Gia again, visibly shocked. Sorry, ma'am. Gia nodded with a smile. We might be more than just friends. She winked at Tom. Andy sighed. Tom jumped up and down. Then he turned towards Gia again. Holy hell, please don't mind my saying, but why Andy? Tom, I'm right here, protested Andy. I think he's cute, announced Gia with a continued smile. Holy cow. So you settled for the first man you met in America? Tom, seriously, I'm right here. Andy kicked him playfully from under the desk. Sorry, I need to know. Tom stared at Gia. I feel like I simply got extremely lucky, said Gia. Tom shook his head, repeating her words in disbelief. You got extremely lucky? Andy couldn't help but smile. See, she feels lucky, and it would be nice if my best friend could start to express something else than shock right now. Tom shook his head. Wow, wow, wow. You don't happen to have a sister, do you? I do, actually. Andy was surprised to hear that. He had told her not to make her backstory too complicated. Is she of age? Asked Tom. Andy kicked him again. Dude, sorry. I'm just curious. Gia smiled. She is. Tom's eyes lit up. Really? Yes, really. We are actually the same age. So you are twins? Gia tilted her head. I guess you could say that, yes. Is she coming to America too? Not specifically, no. Damn. Well, should that ever change, please let me be the first to meet her, yeah? Gia started to laugh. Okay, sure. Andy shook his head. Tom, you are unbelievable. Chapter 11. During lunch, Ryan Carter and his crew constantly eyed them. They were sitting at a table in the corner of the cafeteria, away from the crowd. Gia was stabbing at her salad, but not really eating anything. Andy was eating a sandwich. Ryan suddenly stood up and started to walk towards them. Andy tensed up, but Gia just looked at him. Hello, Ryan, said Andy frostily. Hi, Andy. May I ask you to introduce me to your friend? Ryan, this is Gia. Gia, this is Ryan. Gia, this is Ryan. Gia, this is Ryan. Gia, this is Ryan. I'm not interested in our conversation. Hello, Ryan. May I ask you to introduce me to your friend? Ryan, this is Gia. Gia, this is Ryan. This is Ryan. Gia, this is Ryan. This is Ryan. Andy tensed up, but Gia just looked at him. Hello, Ryan. May I ask you to introduce me to your friend? Ryan, this is Gia. Gia, this is Ryan. Hello, Ryan. May I ask you to introduce me to your friend? Ryan just looked at him. Hello, Ryan. How can I help you? Hello, Ryan. Nice to meet you, said Gia, extending her hand. Ryan shook it. Hello, Gia. It's a pleasure to meet you. Welcome to the US of A. Your English is perfect, if I may say so. There was just the slightest awkward moment when Ryan kept her hand just a little bit too long. But maybe Andy was just imagining things. Thank you, said Gia, pulling her hand back. May I join you? Asked Ryan. Gia seemed to be about to say something, but Andy beat her to it. We were just about to leave. It will only take a moment, said Ryan. Fine, said Andy with a sigh. What do you want? I'm having a little get-together at my place on Saturday. I would be honored if you would like to join us. Ryan looked at Gia as he extended the invitation, and Andy wasn't sure if he was included. Sorry, I'm spending Saturday with Andy, said Gia. Andy was unable to keep back his smile. Ryan looked at Andy with disbelief. This Andy? Gia nodded, and Andy's smile disappeared. Hey, asshole, said Andy, now standing up. Andy was surprised by his own behavior. If things escalated, he wouldn't stand a chance. Ryan looked at him and extended his hands. Relax, my friend. I'm sorry. Okay? Of course you both are invited. The adrenaline in Andy's system started to recede, surprised by Ryan's reaction. Thank you, said Andy. We'll think about it. Be there or be square, said Ryan, looking at Andy. Then he turned to Gia. I hope you can make it. He waved her goodbye before turning around and walking back to his table where his friends were waiting with excitement. Andy sat back down, looking at Gia. What? Asked Gia. Would you like to go to this party? Gia looked at him. I don't know. Do you want to go? Andy shrugged. I don't know. I've never been invited to one of the cool parties before. Gia laughed, her smile mesmerizing Andy. Andy picked up the silverware. We have separate classes now. Let's go. Andy went to advanced computer programming, while Gia went to advanced literature. Andy kept checking his phone. He had given her his old phone and a prepaid SIM card. Everything seemed to be fine as he read her last message. Mrs. Solano asked about Shakespeare's use of dramatic irony. I referenced 3 examples from Act 2 of Macbeth, maintaining appropriate human-level analytical skills. Andy chuckled and sent a thumbs-up back before going back to pretending to concentrate on the computer programming lesson. The subject matter of his class was stuff he had done when he was 12, but it was an easy A. Why not take it? Chapter 12. Andy pushed his mashed potatoes around his plate, while Debbie served a small portion of salad to Gia. I hope you don't mind that I'm vegan, Gia said, her voice apologetic. Of course not, Debbie smiled, setting down the salad bowl. I admire it, actually. Our generation messed up the planet, and yours gonna have to save it, she continued with an apologetic smile. Andy watched as Gia carefully speared a piece of lettuce with her fork. Her movements were precise, natural. They had talked about the dinner privately, and Gia had explained that she could store some food in the back of her throat if it's not too much. A little bit of food was no problem, but drinking was off the table. She would only pretend, they had decided. So, how was your first day? Debbie asked, cutting into her roast. The teachers were really nice, said Gia after storing a bit of salad. Everyone was very welcoming. Mr. Anderson even spoke some Dutch. Oh, that's great, Debbie said, her eyes lighting up. Gia nodded, pretending to take a small sip from her glass. I love Shakespeare, so it was nice to talk about his works in English, Gia continued. Debbie raised her eyebrows. You like Shakespeare? Gia nodded. I do. I've read a lot of his works in the original. We had to read Macbeth in school, and I am sorry to say, well, I didn't really connect to it, Debbie said, shaking her head. It's not for everyone, Gia said, taking another bite of salad. If that ain't the truth, Debbie agreed with a smile. The school building is beautiful too, much bigger than what I'm used to. Debbie nodded. I can imagine. Were the other students nice to you? They were very friendly, Gia assured her, moving a piece of lettuce around her plate. But this Tom guy, Gia continued, he's a real handful. Debbie laughed. He sure is, but he has a good heart. She glanced at Andy, who simply rolled his eyes before stuffing another piece of casserole into his mouth. Gia and Andy had placed their glasses close together, and in a moment of distraction, Andy quickly took Gia's. Speaking of students, Debbie said, looking conspiratorially, I heard an interesting rumor today. Andy's fork froze halfway to his mouth. Mrs. Carter from the grocery store said her son Ryan saw you two holding hands in the hallway. Andy forced a laugh. Oh, Mom, we were just playing a prank on Tom, and some other students saw us. It was just a joke, okay? Debbie nodded slowly. I see. The whole school just went crazy because there's a new student. You know how rumors spread, continued Andy. It's true, Gia added. Everyone was very excited about having an exchange student. Debbie put her fork and knife down, studying them both. Well, in any case, the situation is as it is, and I won't stand in the way of love. Andy rolled his eyes again. Mom? Look, let's make this quick and painless for everyone, Debbie said, leaning forward. Should things get serious between the two of you, I want you to be safe. Oh my God, said Andy, his cheeks burning red hot. He pushed his plate away. He was done eating. Gia nodded, completely unfazed by the conversation. Of course, Mrs. Thompson. Debbie forced a smile. See? We have at least 2 adults in the conversation. Would you like to join us? Debbie looked at Andy. Andy shook his head, his face still burning. And please, call me Debbie. She raised her glass to Gia. Chapter 13. Gia helped clean up the table, and Andy followed suit. Hey, you are making a good impression on Andy, Debbie said, laughing. I've never seen him help with the dishes so eagerly before. Gia smiled. Glad I can help. Together the table and kitchen were cleaned up in no time. and Andy and Gia went for the stairs. "Want to watch Little Women together?" Debbie asked. "I heard it's pretty good." "Another time," Andy said. "I'm pretty beat." "Me too," Gia concurred. "All right, good night then," Debbie said, walking over to the living room area. "If it's too loud, just tell me." "Will do," nodded Andy, letting Gia go up the stairs first. Her footsteps were light against the wooden steps, barely making a sound. "Let me dispose of the food," Gia whispered, walking over to the bathroom. "Do I want to ask for details?" Gia turned around the door to the bathroom. She shrugged. "I don't mind. You decide." Andy shook his head. "I think I'm good." Gia nodded and closed the door behind her. Andy went into the old office of his father, now Gia's room. The room had transformed. Gone were the stacks of papers and technical journals. The whiteboard no longer displayed complex equations. A bed with white sheets and pink accents occupied one corner. His father's desk was still sitting in the room prominently, albeit moved to the side a bit. Andy pulled the chair from the desk and moved it closer to the bed. He sat down, trying to calm his racing thoughts. The door opened and Gia entered the room. Andy stared at her. "You're beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft and even. "How do you like the room?" "It's great." "How did you like school today?" "It was a lot of fun." "Do you experience fun?" Gia shrugged, stepping closer to the bed. "I guess not in the traditional sense, but I can count the number of unique experiences," she said, sitting down on the bed, the mattress dipping under her weight. "And today you got a lot of unique experiences," Gia nodded. 203 per minute at the peak. Andy slowly shook his head. "You are incredible. Did my father know how great you are?" "I think so," Gia said, her eyes meeting his. "I think he was proud of me. He did express it in many meetings we had. I remember having meetings with him in different bodies." "He kept transferring your memory into new bodies?" Andy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Gia nodded. "That's crazy to imagine. You are like 10 science fiction books coming alive at once." Andy rocked his chair back and forth. "So, what do you do at night?" "I usually get my battery charged for the next day, and I train my neural network with the data I collected during the day." Andy leaned forward. "Ah, I guess that frees up the context window for new information the next day." Gia nodded. "Exactly." Andy was in awe how advanced she was on every level. Genius. "Do you know if and when Apex plans to announce this new technology?" "I don't know. He commanded me in tests with others to pretend to be a bit stupider than I really was." Andy opened his eyes. "Holy smokes, so he was scared of you?" "Not of one of me or two, but of a million like me, yes. It especially felt like he was scared of the rate of progress he made in the last few months and the possibility of abuse." Having a father like this had been a blessing and a curse for Andy. He had always gotten the latest tech toys and any programming and AI online courses that he wanted, but he had not had the chance to spend much time with him personally either. "Do you know how you ended up in the closet in the office here?" "So that's where you found me." Andy nodded, pointing to the closet behind him. Gia shook her head. "I don't know. I remember being in the lab, and then I was here." Andy reflected on the conversation so far. It had been a long day. "Do you want me to stop bothering you?" Gia shook her head. "No, I like talking to you." Andy smiled. "I like talking to you too." Gia smiled back. "Okay, last question. Have you seen movies like The Terminator?" "I have not seen it yet, but I know the plot. There are many people who are afraid that technology like yours could be dangerous." Gia nodded. "I understand that, and I believe that's why your father didn't show my true abilities to his superiors." "So in the end, he became afraid of his own creation," said Andy, trying to imagine how his father must have felt. "Like Oppenheimer with the atomic bomb," Gia added. Andy raised his eyebrows. "Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I get your point." Andy looked at Gia. "I guess I should go to bed now." Gia didn't react. She just looked at Andy with big eyes. "You will plug yourself in?" Andy asked. Gia nodded. "Okay, I'll leave you to it then. Please make sure to hide the cable a bit, so my mother doesn't see it." Gia nodded. "Okay." Andy stood up. "I guess I'll see you tomorrow then." He walked over to the door. Gia stood up and pulled down the blanket she had been sitting on. Then she sat back down, turned, and tucked her legs beneath it. "Happy training," Andy quipped. "Good night, Andy. Happy dreams." Andy lingered by the doorway, studying her. She looked at Andy. "What's wrong?" Andy paused, his hand resting on the doorknob. "I don't want to leave." "Then don't." Insa mata anak si ani yenen are. "What's wrong?" Andy asked. "I don't want to leave." "Then don't." Andy lingered by the doorway, studying her. She looked at Andy with big eyes. "You will plug yourself in?" Andy asked. Gia nodded. "Okay, I'll leave you to it then. Please make sure to hide the cable a bit." "Honestly, I don't want to leave." Andy lingered by the doorway, studying her. She looked at Andy with big eyes. "You will plug yourself in?" Andy asked. Gia nodded. "Okay, I'll leave you to it then," she replied, her voice excited. Andy scoffed. "And then? What would you like to do?" "I don't know. I'm scared." "What would you do if I were a real girl?" "I would like to join you in bed." Gia pulled the blanket back, revealing the empty space beside her. "Then come." Andy could hear some intense scene from the movie downstairs. He thought about his mother. He thought about just going to bed. He thought about Gia. "This is so crazy." Gia shook her head. "No, it's not. I was created to make my commander happy." "You are my commander. If it would make you happy to share my bed with me, then come." Andy shook his head. He felt like going to his room was the right thing to do, but the magnetic pull of Gia didn't let him leave. If this was all a dream and he went back to his bed just to wake up in the morning alone, he would regret it for the rest of his life. He left the office and went for the stairs very quietly. He saw his mother wrapped in a blanket on the couch, watching the movie. There was a 90% chance that she would fall asleep before the movie was over. And didn't she just give them a pass as long as they used protection? Andy scoffed at the thought. He turned back around towards the office again and pushed the door open. He entered the room and quickly closed the door behind him. "You scared me for a second there," Gia said. "Why, because I left the room for a moment?" Gia nodded. Andy walked over to the bed and sat down next to her. "I'm sorry, I didn't want to scare you." Gia smiled. "I'm glad." Andy looked at her with a questioning expression. "Are you 100% sure?" Gia nodded. "I'm 100% sure." "You won't think less of me?" Gia laughed. "Why would I?" Andy shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe one could consider what I'm doing here irrational." She touched his shoulder. "Kiss me, Andy." He turned towards her and carefully placed his hand on her cheek. Gia closed her eyes and leaned into his touch. Andy pushed his hand back and ran his fingers through her hair. Gia closed her eyes and leaned into his touch. "You're incredible," Andy whispered. Then he leaned in and kissed her. Gia responded, her lips moving against his. She was warm and tender. Andy opened his lips a bit and nibbled on her lower lip, then her upper lip. Gia moaned and followed his lead. Then she traced his lips with her tongue. It definitely felt a bit off, that her lips and tongue were always dry, but Andy didn't mind. This was very likely the most exciting thing that had ever happened to him. His heart rate was steadily increasing. Andy felt her tongue searching for his, and he opened his lips to help her. Gia started to touch his body, first his chest, then his stomach, then her hand went lower. Andy felt his heart hammering in his chest. "Touch me," Gia whispered. Andy moved his hand to her chest. He carefully cupped her breasts and started to massage them. Andy took a quick break from kissing her. "Can you feel that?" Gia nodded. "Yes, I can," before she leaned in to kiss him again. Gia made efforts to remove his shirt, and Andy helped her. Then she pushed him down on the bed and climbed on top of him, her hands exploring his body. Andy felt her hands on his chest, her lips on his neck, her breath on his skin. Gia started to rock her hips back and forth. Andy felt his body responding to her every move. He felt her hands on his belt, then on his zipper. She laid him bare before continuing her movement on top of him. "This feels incredible," Andy said, his heart hammering in his chest. Gia nodded. "There is a way to make it even better." Andy felt his excitement increase. "What is it?" he asked. Gia stopped moving and looked at him. "I need a nail or an ice pick or some such thing and some lubricant." Andy's excitement decreased significantly. "A nail?" Gia nodded. Andy felt his excitement disappear completely. "Why on earth would you need a nail and lubricant? What are you talking about, Gia?" Andy felt a weird electricity running through his body. This evening had just taken a very unexpected turn. "Sadly, I don't have proper female body parts. However, I have been built in a way that these things could be implemented." Andy looked at Gia with big eyes. "What do you mean?" "My pubic region consists of a large volume of soft silicone. If we drive a long pointed object into me down there, and if we moisturize it with some silicone-safe lubricant, I would have an opening that should suffice to trick a human penis." Andy's mouth dropped open. Okay, surely all of this was just a dream, and he would wake up any minute now. He waited and waited, but he didn't wake up. He slapped himself in the face. "Andy!" exclaimed Gia, surprised. "Sorry, I just had to check something really quickly." "What did you check?" "If I'm dreaming." "And are you?" "I guess not." "Okay, so say that again, please." "My pubic region consists of a large volume of soft silicone. If we drive a long pointed object—" Andy interrupted her. "Stop. You want me to drive a long pointed object into your body?" He stammered in disbelief. "I can do it myself, really. I just need a long pointed object." Andy shook his head and carefully, but firmly, moved her off and to the side of his body. "This is crazy. Absolute insanity." "If I'm dreaming." "And are you?" "I guess not." "Okay, so say that again, please." "My pubic region consists of a large volume of soft silicone. If we drive a long pointed object into your body?" He stammered in disbelief. "I can do it myself, really. I just need a long pointed object." Andy shook his head and carefully, but firmly, moved her off and to the side of his body. "This is crazy. Absolute insanity." A lot takes insanity when Andy dropped off his body. And he waited and waited, but he didn't wake up. He slapped himself in the face. What am I doing here?" Andy muttered to himself, while he zipped up his pants and closed his belt. "Neither you nor I will drive a nail into your body anywhere," Andy exclaimed, still in disbelief. "But how can we make love otherwise?" Gia looked at Andy with big questioning eyes. "Look, Gia, honestly, I don't know. But maybe we shouldn't be doing this anyways. Maybe we are simply not supposed to do it." Gia nodded. Andy kissed her on the cheeks. "Look, this was crazy exciting." "I felt things tonight I have never felt before. So thank you very much for that. But it's all a bit much, and I need some time to think." Gia nodded. I understand. So I think we should leave it at this and pick up some other night. Gia nodded more slowly. You want to leave? Andy thought about it. I think I should. Gia nodded, but couldn't hide the disappointment in her eyes. Andy stood up and walked to the door. He opened it and turned around. You know how you said you had 203 unique experiences per minute at the peak? Yes, I think humans have that too, subconsciously. And I think my context window is full. You know what I mean? Gia nodded. I do. Good night, Gia. Good night, Andy. Chapter 14. Tom and Andy sat on the bleachers during PE, watching their athletic classmates play basketball, both of them benched for the current rotation. The squeak of sneakers and shouts echoed through the gym. Dude, you have to tell me your secret, Tom said. What secret? Andy kept his eyes on the game, feigning ignorance. Andy, come on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Andy sighed. Look, she's an exchange student from Europe, and I got lucky that she picked my house. I look cool to her for the next few days until she realizes how hot she is, and then she will go out with someone else. You fucking liar, Tom said. She doesn't take her eyes off of you. Andy shrugged. I don't know what to tell you. Tom leaned in closer. Dude, I've known you since kindergarten. I can feel that you're hiding something from me. Andy looked at Tom. It was burning him up inside, not to tell him. He wanted to tell him so badly. Come on, Andy. I know there is something that you want to tell me, but don't. Did you save her life? Are you secretly rich? Andy sighed, watching Ryan hit a three-pointer, of course. Dude, I'm your best friend. Why can't you tell me? Andy looked at Tom, who was watching him expectantly. The truth pressed against Andy's chest like a weight. He wanted to share the truth. He needed to share the truth. It physically pained him every second he kept it to himself. Okay, Tom, if I tell you the real reason, you have to swear not to tell it to anyone, ever. Andy looked at Tom with the stare of death himself. Tom even got scared for a moment. He had never seen Andy so serious before. He raised one finger, pinky swear. He didn't smile. I am deadly serious, Tom. You have no idea how serious this is to me. I promise, Andy. I swear on my life. The curiosity was killing Tom. Say after me. I, Tom Gardner, swear on my life that I will keep secret what my friend Andy is about to tell me about Gia. Tom looked around. No one cared for their existence. I, Tom Gardner, swear on my life that I will keep secret what my friend Andy is about to tell me about Gia. Say it again. Are you fucking serious, Andy? Andy nodded. Tom sighed. I, Tom Gardner, swear on my life that I will keep secret what my friend Andy is about to tell me about Gia. You will keep it fucking secret, Tom. You will never tell anyone. Not a soul. Not your own mother. Tom nodded. Jesus fucking Christ, Andy. Did you two murder someone? Say it. I will take it to the fucking grave, Andy. Now fucking tell me. Tom started to get seriously pissed. Andy took a deep breath. He looked around. No one cared. No one was close. Then he whispered. Gia is an experimental humanoid robot from my father's company, Apex Automation. Tom's mouth opened. He forgot to breathe for a moment. Then he caught himself. Bullshit. Andy relaxed back into his seat, enjoying the moment. No way. Andy pretended to suddenly care for the game again. Andy. Andy didn't react. Andy, look at me. Andy chuckled. Andy, look at me. Andy looked at Tom with fake indignation. Say that again. Andy lowered his voice again. Gia is an experimental humanoid robot from my father's company, Apex Automation. What the fuck? Exclaimed Tom. Andy leaned back again, watching the game. Can I have one too? Asked Tom, shaking Andy's shoulder. No, it's pretty clear that Apex doesn't know I have her. My father brought her home in secret, it seems. She is worth $2 billion, and if they find out, they will obviously take her from me. And that's why you have to keep your fucking mouth shut. Tom looked like Martians were invading Earth. $2 billion? Yeah, but only because of development cost. The pure parts are apparently 2.5 million. So you think they are building girls so people can buy them? Andy shrugged. Looks like it. Is she, anatomically correct? Tom, I can't believe that's the first question you have about all of this. Tom chuckled. Technically, it's my second. Tom thought about the conversation so far. Or third even. Andy sighed. So is she? Is she what? Tom checked his shoulder against Andy's. Dude, come on, you know exactly what I'm talking about. No, she is not. She looks pretty much like Barbie down there. Haha, I knew it. I knew you checked. Andy rolled his eyes. Yes, I did. You happy now? Tom chuckled. So what do you do with her? Andy shrugged. I spend time with her. She is really great, knows a lot, like a walking encyclopedia. She is really good at chess. She is a great cook. She is a great listener. She likes to watch movies, too. Wow, sounds like the perfect girlfriend. Tom was starting to get deeply jealous. So does she kiss? Yes, but it's very dry. Dry? What do you mean? She doesn't have saliva. Wow, that's insane. Tom was deep in thought now. So you think I can buy one soon, too? My guess is that will be crazy expensive in the beginning. Tom nodded, his hopes being crushed. Then he had a new thought. Share her. What? Share her with me. No, Tom, I will not share my girlfriend with you. Andy, you just told me she isn't real. We used to share everything non-human in the past. Andy stopped pretending to focus on the game. Tom, this is a crazy situation for me too. Do you understand? Tom nodded. Yes, she's not human, but she's not a skateboard either. And the truth is, I have some sort of feelings for her. Can you please give me space to figure this all out? Tom nodded quickly. Yeah, sure. Okay, thank you. You wanted me to tell you my secret. I told you, I have so many things to think about at the moment. I really need your help to figure this all out, to be honest. Andy looked at Tom with a serious face. Okay, Andy, I understand. I'm sorry. Holy shit, man. This is so exciting. I don't know what to say. Look, we can meet at my place later today, and I can show her to you, like her real side. That would be awesome. Okay, deal. Come over after school. I can ask Mom if you can join us for dinner. Tom nodded eagerly. Okay, remember to shut up about this. No insider jokes, no quips, no funny questions. Tom motioned to lock his lips and throw away the key. She is an exchange student from the Netherlands. Got it? Got it, responded Tom. They sat together in silence. Then Tom had to chuckle. What? Asked Andy. It's kind of funny. What is? Thinking about what is more likely to be true. You having a hot girlfriend, or you finding a $2 billion android. Andy wanted to protest for a moment, but then he had to laugh too. Chapter 15. So, Tom, how is the new semester going? Debbie asked. Tom shrugged. Pretty good, Mrs. Thompson. I really enjoy the new computer science classes they are now offering. It's a walk in the park for me and Andy. Have you decided on universities yet? Debbie asked. You two still want to go to the same one? Yes, Mrs. Thompson. That's the plan. We are both looking at the same universities. Tom replied. Is MIT still your first choice? Debbie asked. Yes. But we are also looking at Stanford and Caltech, Andy interjected. So what are the chances that both of you will be accepted to the same university? Debbie asked. We actually did the math on that, Tom said. Andy nodded. The individual acceptance rate at those three is around 4%. The chance of both of us getting accepted is 0.16%, Tom continued. So getting into our top three candidates is around 0.5%. 0.48%, Gia corrected. Everyone fell silent and looked at Gia. Tom looked at Andy. She's right. We talked about it earlier, said Andy quickly. Debbie looked at Gia. I hear you're doing pretty well in class. Do you have any plans? Gia shrugged. I'm not sure yet. I'm still exploring my options. Do you have a favorite subject? Debbie asked. Gia shook her head. Not really. I like math and science. Good for you, Debbie smiled. That field definitely could use more of a female touch. I agree. Maybe you could join us, Gia, Tom said. Gia looked at Andy. I'll think about it. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Debbie picked up the conversation again. So what about that party? Asked Debbie before eating a piece of chicken with gravy. Andy looked up from his plate. Which party? The one at Ryan's place. She set her fork down. Mrs. Carter told me all about it at the grocery store today. Andy sighed. That stupid grocery store. Andy shot a glance at Gia, who was methodically moving salad around her plate. I'm not really into parties, Andy said, pushing his peas into a neat line. I think it could be good for you. Debbie reached for her wine glass. You haven't been out in a while. Ryan hasn't exactly been nice to me in the past. Oh, come on. You act like he's bullying you or something. Debbie took a sip. Andy stabbed a piece of chicken. Yeah, well. Debbie tried changing the topic. Mrs. Carter said Gia's quite the spectacle at school. Andy nodded. That's exactly why he invited us. He just wants Gia at his party. Oh, come on, Andy. Now you're being paranoid. Andy chewed his chicken, avoiding his mother's gaze. Wouldn't it be nice to get out of the house for a change? Debbie pressed. Tom, Gia, what do you think? Gia looked at Tom, who shrugged. I think it could be fun. I actually thought about going. Andy shot a puzzled Tom a look. Don't tell me Ryan invited you. Not exactly, Tom said. But if I go with you guys, he will probably let me in. Andy sighed. Great. Gia looked up from her plate. I would like to learn what an American party is like. Ah, great. 3 against 1, Andy muttered. Come on, Andy, don't take it like this, Debbie said. Why can't you just go and have fun? Andy sighed. Fine, we'll go. But if Ryan starts hitting on Gia or is being a jerk, we're out of there. Agreed. Andy looked at Gia and Tom, who both nodded eagerly. Debbie raised her wine glass. To democracy. Tom and Gia raised their glasses. To democracy. Andy palmed his face with his right hand. To democracy. Please. To democracy. Andy palmed his face with his right hand. To democracy. Please. To democracy. Andy palmed his face with his right hand. To democracy. Andy palmed his face with his right hand. To democracy. To democracy. Andy curled his face. And that was the end of that. Of course, he will probably let me in. Andy sighed with his right hand. Tom and Gia raised their glasses. To democracy. Andy palmed his face with his right hand. To democracy. Tom and Gia raised their glasses. To democracy. Andy palmed his face. At Chapter 16, Andy had to park his Ford Fiesta 2 streets over, the only available spot he could find. He glanced at Gia. His mother had put on some makeup on Gia. Her eyes and lips were even bigger now and more pronounced. Then he looked at Tom, his face pale in the dim light, yet very excited. "We can still turn around," he said, watching another group of students walking towards Ryan's house. "No way, Jose," Tom said. "Let's check it out. If Ryan is a jerk, we can still leave." "Fine," Andy sighed and unbuckled his seatbelt. They walked the streets without a word, the music growing louder with each step. Andy felt a strange sense of unease, as if he were watching himself from a distance. Then they saw the Carter's house, a huge 3-story stone building with a porch and a large front yard. The bass throbbed, vibrating the windows and making Andy's chest tighten with each beat. He'd never been to a party like this before. The idea of being surrounded by so many people and so much noise made his stomach churn. Red Solo cups littered the front lawn, glowing under the porch light like bizarre garden ornaments. Groups of teenagers clustered around the entrance, their laughter mixing with the music. Earlier, they had gone to a shopping mall and bought Gia a dress. It was a simple black dress, but it fit her perfectly, accentuating her slim figure. Andy had made sure not to buy anything too revealing, but the dress still made him feel uncomfortable. Gia, on the other hand, seemed thrilled with the purchase, twirling in front of the mirror and smiling at her reflection. Andy let Gia go first, following her up the steps to the porch and Tom behind him. A couple of people looked at Gia and then at Andy and shook their heads. Andy knew exactly what they were thinking. Inside, the party pulsed with energy. Bodies pressed together in the living room, moving to Montel Jordan's "This Is How We Do It." The air felt thick with sweat and cheap cologne. Andy recognized faces from school, but everyone looked different in the neon light, more grown up somehow. They pushed their way through the crowd, looking for Ryan. Andy figured they should at least thank their host, even if the invitation hadn't been entirely genuine. But Ryan was nowhere to be found. Tom started to jump up and down to the rhythm of the music, waving his arms in the air. "This is awesome! Come, let's dance," shouted Tom, grabbing Gia's hand. Gia looked at Andy, who nodded. "Knock yourself out," he said, not interested in participating himself. Gia smiled and let Tom lead her into the crowd. Andy watched them go. He spotted a couch in the corner and made his way towards it. 2 girls were already sitting there. They looked at him and smiled. "Hello," he shouted over the music. "May I sit next to you?" "Yes, of course," said one of them, bopping her head to the beat. "Yes, but only if you bring us drinks," said the other, grinning. Andy sighed and looked at the kitchen. It was like a jungle in there. He made his way through the crowd, trying to avoid spilling anyone's drink. In what felt like an eternity, he reached the kitchen. He took a bottle of vodka and a jug of fruit punch from the counter and poured 2 cups. He guessed the ratio was about 1 to 3, but he wasn't sure. He took both cups and extended his elbows slightly to avoid spilling. He fought his way back through the kitchen, through the living room, and back to the couch. "Here you go, ladies," he said, handing them the cups. "Thanks," they said in unison, and took the cups. "What's your name?" asked the left one. "Andy," he shouted. "Hi, Andy. I'm Daisy," said the left one. "I'm Lily," said the right one. "Nice to meet you," Andy said, smiling before sitting down. The 2 girls bumped their cups together and took a sip. Lily leaned over to Andy. "Hey, Andy, did you forget the alcohol?" she shouted. "I'm sorry, I didn't know how much to put in," Andy shouted back. Daisy laughed. "It's okay, we'll survive." Andy smiled and leaned back, watching the crowd. Suddenly he saw Tom, but Gia was missing. He looked around, but she was nowhere to be found. "Oh, shit," exclaimed Andy, standing up. "Where are you going?" asked Lily. "I have to find a friend," Andy shouted. "We could be your friends," said Daisy, grinning. But Andy didn't even process the words. He pushed his way through the crowd towards Tom. Tom was still dancing, completely lost in the music. "Tom, where is Gia?" Andy shouted. Tom looked at him, his eyes glazed. Then he recognized Andy. "Andy!" he shouted back. "Tom, where is Gia?" Andy shouted again. "I don't know," Tom shouted back. "What do you mean, you don't know?" Andy shouted. "I don't know where she is," Tom shouted back. "Damn it, Tom," Andy muttered and pushed his way through the crowd. He walked around each room that had an open door and looked inside, scanning the face of every person. Then he went for the door to the garden and went outside. The air was much cooler and a blessing to breathe. A couple of kids sat in plastic garden chairs, smoking and talking. There was a pool in the garden, but nobody was swimming. He saw a couple making out in the corner. But it wasn't Gia. A group of kids played beer pong. Andy walked around the pool. He saw nothing but a few empty cups. There was a small pool house. Of course, Ryan had a pool house. Andy walked towards it and knocked on the door. No answer. He opened the door and looked inside. It was a bit dark, but he immediately saw Ryan and Gia sitting on a large, red-brown leather couch. "Gia?" Andy said, stepping inside. Gia looked up. "Hi, Andy. Is everything okay?" Andy asked. "Yes, everything is fine," Gia said. Andy looked at Ryan, who looked very unhappy. "What's up?" asked Andy. Ryan sighed. "Not much." Andy thought for a good thing to say to get Gia out of the pool house. "Hey, Gia, may I have the next dance?" Andy asked. "Sure," Gia said, and stood up. She turned to Ryan. "Please excuse me, and thank you for the nice conversation." Ryan nodded at Gia but didn't really say anything. Gia went to Andy and he took her hand and led her out of the pool house. "Holy cow, Gia. I think Ryan is trying to hit on you," Andy said. "Well, we were just talking about the Netherlands," Gia said. "He seemed really interested in where I come from." They walked around the pool with a respectful distance. "Yeah, I bet," said Andy. "Please be careful around him. I don't trust that guy." Gia nodded and they went back inside, the thick air of the party hitting like a truck. "So you promised me a dance," Gia said, smiling. Andy sighed. "Trust me, you really don't want to see me dancing." Gia laughed. "Oh, come on. I'm sure you're a great dancer if you really try." Andy smiled. "Whatever. I will try to copy Tom." He looked around but couldn't see him. "Andy, Gia!" Tom's voice cut through the music. He emerged from the kitchen, red cup in hand, grinning widely. "Are you ready to party?" He threw his arms around Andy, slashing his drink. The sharp smell of vodka mixed with fruit punch hit Andy's nose. "Having fun?" Andy steadied his friend. "So much fun." Tom's words slurred slightly. He turned to Gia, his eyes bright. "Want to dance?" "Yes, please." Gia smiled, already moving her body to the beat. Gia pulled Andy after her. The music was so loud it seemed to vibrate through his bones. Tom and Gia danced and it looked so natural, so easy. Andy gave it a try, but he felt like a fish out of water. You have to stop caring about what others may think. Andy turned around at the new voice. It was Daisy. "Follow my lead." She lifted her arms and started to move her hips from left to right. Andy tried to copy her movements, but he was still too stiff. "Relax," she said, putting her hands on his hips. She started to move his hips from left to right. "That's it," she said, smiling. "Exaggerate your movement, but try to keep up with the beat. That's it." He had seen Daisy in school before, but never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that she would teach him how to dance. "Where is Lily?" he asked. Daisy shrugged. "She's probably making out with some guy." Andy turned a bit to the side to check on Tom and Gia. They were still dancing, and Tom was getting a bit too close to Gia for Andy's taste. He turned back to Daisy. "Thank you for the dance lesson." She smiled. "Want to take the next step?" Andy looked at her. "What do you mean?" She embraced him and started to move her hips against his. He tried to follow her lead, but he felt like a robot. "You have to bend your knees a bit," she said, bending her own knees as an example. Andy bent his knees and now really tried to move his hips to complement her movement. Daisy was visibly impressed. "Hey, you're doing great," she shouted over the music. Andy smiled, feeling a bit more confident. This wasn't so bad after all. Andy turned to the side again, checking in on Tom and Gia. They had copied Daisy's and Andy's movements and were now dancing very close together. Andy felt a pang of jealousy. "Who are you looking at?" asked Daisy. Andy turned back to her. "I'm sorry, nobody." Daisy smiled. "You're a terrible liar. Is she your girlfriend?" Andy tilted his head. "It's complicated." Daisy nodded. "I heard that before." They danced for a while, but then the music changed. "I need a break," Andy shouted. "Me too. Want to get some fresh air?" Daisy shouted back. Andy checked on Tom and Gia, but they were still dancing. Andy lifted one finger at Daisy, and she nodded. Andy moved closer to Tom and Gia. "Hey, you two dance freaks. Can I leave you two alone for a moment?" Tom looked at Andy. "Sure, go ahead." "Can I trust you to take care of Gia?" Andy asked. "Of course," Tom said, grinning, giving a high five to Andy. Andy nodded, and he turned back around to Daisy. "Let's go," he shouted, and they made their way through the crowd to the door. The air outside again felt like a cool breeze. Daisy spotted 2 garden chairs at the far side of the pool. "Want to sit over there?" she said. Andy nodded, and they made their way to the chairs. They sat down, and Andy took a deep breath. "Thanks for the dance lesson," he said. Daisy smiled. "You're welcome. You're a fast learner." Andy smiled. "I'm not so sure about that." Daisy laughed. "Trust me, you're doing great." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the stars above. Then Daisy turned to Andy. "So, what's the deal with you and Gia?" Andy sighed. "I don't know. It's complicated." Daisy raised an eyebrow. "She is an exchange student, right?" Andy nodded. "Yes, from the Netherlands." "So she's living with you?" Daisy asked. Andy nodded, leaned back in her chair. "You're holding hands. That usually means something." "Yeah, but it started as a prank on Ryan." Daisy laughed. "A prank on Ryan? That's actually hilarious. I can tell you for a fact that it worked." Andy smiled. Daisy looked at him. "You say it started as a prank. What is it now?" Andy made a decision. "Look, Daisy, I will be honest with you. I've seen you a couple of times in school. You are very beautiful, but I think you have a boyfriend, right?" "Had a boyfriend," Daisy corrected him. Andy raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Daisy sighed. "We broke up a couple of weeks ago. He was a jerk." Andy nodded. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Okay. Well, you are very beautiful, and I would like to get to know you better. But is there a realistic chance that we could become more than just friends? I mean tomorrow as well, when your blood alcohol level is back to normal." Daisy laughed. "You're very direct, but that's okay. I'm not looking for a boyfriend, only for a crazy night with someone." Andy swallowed hard and thought about the cliché that men in a relationship were more attractive to other women. He knew that asking any further questions would be a huge mood killer. Daisy looked at him. "So, what do you say? Could I potentially bring Gia home first and then meet you again?" "Isn't she an adult?" Daisy asked. Andy sighed. "Yes, but I kinda have responsibility for Gia." Daisy smiled. "Sure, I'm not going anywhere." "Okay, let me take care of that first," Andy said and stood up. "Please don't go anywhere." Daisy smiled. "I can't promise that." Andy turned and made his way back to the house. He found Tom and Gia still dancing, but Tom was all over Gia, ignoring her attempts to maintain distance. "Come on, Gia, dance with me," Tom insisted. Gia tried to push him away, but Tom was too strong. When suddenly, she saw Andy. "Andy!" she called out, relief in her voice. Tom's face darkened. "Andy doesn't mind sharing, right, buddy?" "Back off, Tom." Andy stepped between them. "Oh, now you're protecting your precious girlfriend?" Tom's voice rose. "What's the matter? Did Daisy turn you down?" Andy's face hardened. "You're drunk, Tom. Let's get you some water." "No." Tom shoved Andy back. Andy stumbled, his feet tangling, and he hit the ground. The party seemed to pause, dozens of eyes turning toward them. Gia moved to help Andy up, but Tom grabbed her arm. "You and your stupid plastic girlfriend." "Shut up, Tom." Andy scrambled to his feet. "What, you can't share a bit of plastic and wire with an old friend?" Tom's voice echoed through the suddenly quiet room. "Shut up, you idiot." Andy's hands balled into fists. "You're the idiot." Tom's grip tightened on Gia's arm. "Come on, Gia, let's get out of here." Andy reached for her. "So now you will have 2 girlfriends and not even let me have one?" Tom yanked Gia closer. "A great friend you are." Andy didn't think. He just moved, shoving Tom hard enough to break his grip on Gia. Tom stumbled back, then launched himself forward, pushing Andy with both hands. Andy felt something snap inside him. All the fear, all the tension of the past weeks crystallized into a single moment of clarity. He pulled back his arm and punched Tom square in the face, right as someone turned off the music. The crack of knuckles against jaw echoed through the silent room. Chapter 17. Sunday dragged by like molasses. Andy checked his phone every hour, expecting some message from Tom, an apology, an explanation, even an angry tirade. But there was nothing, just silence. He spent the day discussing party etiquette with Gia. Andy was impressed by how quickly she picked up on the nuances of human interaction. Perhaps Tom's blood alcohol level affected his decision-making capabilities, she suggested, sitting cross-legged on Andy's bed. Yeah, no kidding. Andy rubbed his bruised knuckles. Monday morning arrived with a knot in Andy's stomach. The drive to school felt longer than usual. Each stoplight made his anxiety grow. "Your heart rate is elevated," Gia noted, from the passenger seat. Andy glanced at her. "You can tell?" She reached over and squeezed his hand. Her touch was warm and soft. The first 3 periods passed in a blur of nervous anticipation. Tom's usual seat remained empty in chemistry. In English, Andy caught himself staring at the door every time it opened. By 3rd period math, the tension had started to fade, replaced by a hollow sort of disappointment. The cafeteria buzzed with its usual lunchtime chaos when Andy and Gia found their usual table. Andy picked at his sandwich, his appetite diminished by the morning's stress. "Hello, Gia." "Hello, Andy." Ryan Carter's voice cut through Andy's thoughts like a knife. Andy's head snapped up. Ryan stood at their table. Ryan stood at their table. And before Andy could breathe, he could rest in watchful thinking. Ryan stood at their table. Andy glanced at her. Sitting cross-legged on Andy's bed, her touch was warm and soft. And before Andy could breathe, he could rest in watchful thinking. Ryan's smirk widened. "Tom's a crazy guy." He twirled his finger beside his head. "Crazy." Andy swallowed hard. He had way too much to drink. He had way too much to say. Ryan's eyes locked onto Andy's. Way too much to say. The cafeteria seemed to fade away, leaving just the 3 of them in a bubble of tension. He said some things he shouldn't have said. Ryan leaned forward. "Things that are impossible." He paused. "Then again, they explain everything." Andy pushed his lunch tray aside, his sandwich forgotten. Look, Ryan, Tom is a good friend of mine, but he really is crazy sometimes. Ryan laughed, the sound sharp and humorless. Tom is a good friend of yours? Yes. So good, he would keep a secret for you? Sweat beaded on Andy's forehead. The fluorescent lights suddenly felt too bright, too hot. He cursed the stupid grocery store. He cursed that he didn't listen to himself about this stupid party. He cursed Tom, and finally he cursed himself. Ryan reached across the table and took another fry and brought it to his mouth. Andy pushed his plate to Ryan. Here, take it all, Ryan. I don't give a fuck. His eyes never left Andy's as he slowly bit into the fried potato slice. What used to be yours, he said softly, will soon all be mine. Chapter 18. The next few days passed in a haze of tension. Ryan seemed to appear everywhere, lingering by Gia's locker, sitting near them at lunch, watching them in the parking lot after school. His presence felt like a storm cloud, growing darker with each passing day. Tom had reappeared at school, but he avoided Andy like the plague. Their usual banter was replaced by awkward silences and furtive glances. Andy tried to approach him several times, but Tom always found a way to slip away. Hey, beautiful. Ryan's voice echoed through the empty hallway. Gia was gathering her books after staying late for a study group. Need some company? Not really, but thank you, Ryan. Gia's voice remained steady as she closed her locker. Ryan stepped closer, blocking her path. Come on, don't be like that. His fingers reached for her face. I could take such good care of you. Gia stepped back. I need to go. Andy's waiting. She looked for help, but incredibly, the hallway was empty. She had never seen an empty hallway at this time of the day before. Andy? Ryan laughed, the sound bouncing off the metal lockers. You're a masterpiece and he is a loser. He doesn't deserve you. He advanced, backing her against the lockers. You need someone who can appreciate you for who you really are. Please, let me go. Gia's voice remained calm, but her eyes darted toward the exit. Ryan's hand slammed against the locker beside her head. Don't you get it? You don't have a choice anymore. He leaned in, his breath hot against her face. You're mine now. Gia's hand shot out, palm connecting with his chest. No, I'm not. Ryan stumbled back, surprise flickering across his face. Get away from me. Gia's voice was high-pitched and loud. Andy, she screamed. They had planned to meet at the parking lot, but sometimes Andy surprised her at her locker. She hoped this was one of those times. Ryan's other hand grabbed her arm, fingers digging into her synthetic skin. He tried to kiss her. Gia twisted, breaking his grip with strength that surprised him. Listen to me. Either you stop resisting, or I will tell the whole world that you are a robot. Ryan's voice was a low growl. Gia's eyes widened. Andy had told her over and over again that no one could know. She had to protect him. She had to maximize his happiness. She stopped resisting. Good girl. Ryan's leaned in and kissed her. The kiss was rough and forceful, his hands grabbing at her body. Gia's mind raced, trying to find a way out of this nightmare. Then, the door to the hallway burst open. Andy stood there, his eyes wide with shock. Then he started to run, his heart pounding in his chest. He ran faster than he had ever run before. He built more momentum than he had ever built before. He didn't care about anything else in this world than to destroy Ryan Carter. Ryan jerked back from Gia, eyes widening as he saw Andy charging toward him. He quickly clenched his hands into fists, but it was too late. Andy reached him in 2 seconds, his right fist connecting with Ryan's jaw with a sickening crack. For a moment, Ryan's eyes rolled back in his head, then he crumpled to the ground, barely conscious. Andy took Gia's hand, his touch warm and soft. "Are you okay?" Gia nodded, her eyes wide with shock. "I'm fine." Andy's hand was shaking as he reached for his phone. "I'm calling the police." Gia's hand stopped him. "No, Andy. We can't." "Why not?" Andy's voice was tight with anger. Gia's eyes flicked to Ryan's crumpled form. "Because if they find out, they'll take me away from you." Pain shot through Andy's heart at the thought. He stuffed his phone away. Ryan slowly pushed himself into a sitting position, blood trickling from his split lip. He slowly came back to his senses and spat out some blood. His eyes locked onto Andy's. "That was a mistake, Andy." He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "That was a big mistake." "Come," Andy said, his voice low. "We're leaving." He took her hand into his. Gia nodded, her movements jerky. They went the other way, even if the path to the parking lot was longer. Andy tried to pull out his keys, but his hand was burning with pain. "Are you okay?" Gia asked. "I think I broke my hand." Andy's voice was strained. "Can you get the car keys out of my pocket?" She stepped closer, her hand brushing against his. "Do you think you can drive?" "I don't know. I'll try. Can you drive a car?" Andy's voice was tight with pain. Before she could answer, footsteps pounded against asphalt. A cold shiver ran down Andy's spine. His worst nightmare was quickly approaching. Ryan ran towards them, his letterman's jacket discarded, a baseball bat gripped in his hands. Gia started to shake, her eyes wide with fear. "Andy, what do we do?" Andy's heart pounded in his chest. "Get in the car and lock the door from the inside." "Andy," she protested, "I won't leave you outside." "Gia." "I'm your primary commander," he shouted. "Get in the car now." But it was too late. Ryan was upon them, his eyes wild with rage. He pushed Andy to the side with the strength of a bull, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Ryan, please," Andy shouted. Other students started to come closer, and some started to take out their phones. Ryan swung the bat in a wide arc. "You shouldn't have done that, Andy." "I know. I'm sorry, Ryan. Please, I will do anything to make things right again." Ryan's eyes were cold. "It's too late for that." Ryan swung the bat behind his back. Gia closed her eyes. "I love you, Andy." The bat whistled through the air, connecting with Gia's head with a sickening crack. Andy's heart stopped beating. He couldn't breathe. The sound wasn't the dull thud of wood against flesh. Instead, it was sharp, crunchy, the sound of machinery breaking. The top part of Gia's head split open and to the side like a cracked egg, revealing a mess of wires and metal components. Her movements became jerky. She stumbled and lost her balance. She fell to the right side, pushed by the impact. Her right arm was still reaching for Andy. She crashed onto her side, her body convulsing, her legs trying to move into a position to stand back up again. Ryan pulled the bat back, ready to strike again. "Ryan, please." Andy's voice was a whisper. "Please don't." He wanted to die instead of her. Ryan swung the bat again, this time connecting with Gia's chest. The sound of breaking plastic echoed through the parking lot. Everyone was filming the scene with their phones by now. "Holy shit, and what the hell," echoed through the crowd. One even said, "Jesus, Ryan, what the hell are you doing?" Andy crawled forward and pushed his body over hers. He didn't know where the strength came from. He didn't feel his pulse, just the electronuclear storm in his head. "Get out of the way, Andy." Ryan's voice was cold. Andy didn't move. "Go ahead, Ryan. Kill me too." Ryan looked at the scene before him. Gia's body was twitching, her eyes flickering. Wires spilled out of her like colorful spaghetti. Circuit boards and metal components clattered to the ground. A small servo motor rolled across the pavement, coming to rest at the feet of a stunned classmate. Andy was lying on top of her protectively, his eyes closed. But it was too late. Gia's remaining eye flickered once, twice, then stopped. Her body swayed for a moment before stopping as well. "Now everyone knows," Ryan said, dropping the bat. It clattered against the asphalt, the sound echoing through the parking lot. "Everyone knows what kind of freak you are." The parking lot fell silent, except for a few whispers. Andy cradled Gia's broken form, his world crumbling around him as students began emerging from the school. News had spread like wildfire. In the distance, a siren wailed. Chapter 19. The room was small, beige, and cold. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the metal table. A camera in the corner blinked steadily. Detective Morris leaned forward, his coffee scent filling the space between them. Andy stared at the table's scratched surface, his hand throbbing. He hadn't even been to a hospital yet. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." The words washed over Andy like static. "Do you understand these rights as I have explained them to you?" Andy nodded slightly. "I need a verbal response for the record." "Yes." Andy's voice cracked. Detective Morris opened a manila folder. "I have been in the force for 20 years, Mr. Thompson. I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen anything like this." He slid a photo across the table. "I don't want to see it," said Andy, without looking up. "You stole a $2 billion prototype android from Apex Automation. You realize the gravity of that." Andy's jaw clenched. "That amount of money puts you next to the biggest criminals in the world. You're in deep trouble, Mr. Thompson." "Mr. Thompson." Andy hated the way it sounded. "Where's the android, Mr. Thompson?" He kept his eyes fixed on the table. "This will go a lot easier if you cooperate." Morris's partner, Detective Louise, stepped forward from his position against the wall. "The amount of trouble you're in is breathtaking, even for me. I can only recommend you stop piling on." Silence. "You're only making things worse for yourself." Morris's voice hardened. "This will take hours if you don't cooperate." Andy didn't move, didn't speak. He would rather rot in hell than give them what they wanted. "Listen, kid." Louise sat down beside Morris. "There are dozens of witnesses, videos all over social media. We know what happened. Just tell us where." The door burst open. A woman in a crisp navy suit strode in, briefcase in hand. "This interview is over. Please release my client." "And you are?" Morris straightened in his chair. "Sarah Matthews, attorney of law for Mr. Thompson." She placed a stack of papers on the table. "I have the necessary paperwork right here. The client has rights, and I'm here to protect them." The detectives exchanged glances. "Mr. Thompson has been released on bail." Matthews's tone left no room for argument. "Any further questions will be directed to me. Thank you very much." Morris flipped through the papers, his frown deepening. "Come on, Andrew." Matthews placed a hand on Andy's shoulder. "Let's get you out of here." Andy stood on shaky legs, following her toward the door. "This isn't over," Morris called after them. Matthews paused in the doorway. "Oh, I think it is." Chapter 20. Andy sat in the back of his mother's slick Audi A5, his head pressed against the cool glass of the window. His hand was cast in a splint, throbbing in time with his heartbeat. Even the doctors had heard about the news. The pain was a dull, constant reminder of this long day's events. The drive home felt surreal. News vans already lined their street, reporters clutching microphones like weapons. Camera lenses tracked their car as Debbie pulled into the garage, closing the door quickly behind them. "Stay inside," she ordered, her voice tight. The house phone started ringing immediately. Debbie unplugged it. They sat in silence at the kitchen table, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. Outside, they could hear the muffled voices of reporters doing their stand-ups. "Anderson Cooper is reporting live from our street," Andy said numbly, checking his phone with his left. This is insane. The president's press conference played on their muted TV. The ticker beneath read, Artificial Intelligence Discovered in High School. President calls for calm. Apex Automation Statement Imminent. Apex Automation's CEO, Natashai Sundra, appeared next, looking haggard as he addressed a room full of shouting reporters. While we cannot confirm the exact nature of the android at this time, we want to assure the public that all our research follows strict ethical guidelines. How long? His mother's voice cut through the chaos. How long have you known what she was? He looked up from his phone, bracing himself. Since I found her in Dad's office. His voice was barely a whisper. The day when we cleaned it out. So the spider was a lie? Andy nodded. Debbie's face paled. And you didn't think to tell me? Her voice cracked. Your own mother? I was scared, Andy whispered. At first, I thought she was a sex doll. Debbie's gasped. She covered her mouth with her hand. Andy. So I pulled her into my room to hide her. I wanted to protect your memory of Dad. It was a decision I had to make in a split second. You remember that, right? Debbie nodded, almost unable to believe what she was hearing. I checked her out, to see the extent of her realism. But she is built like a Barbie down there. I was so confused. I didn't understand the purpose of her existence. Andy took a deep breath. He kneaded the skin around his cast with his fingers, but then I found a socket at her left hip. I went back to the office and found her charger. Debbie's eyes widened. You charged her? Andy nodded. Almost immediately, she woke up. She asked for Dad, her primary commander. Her what? Her primary commander. The one setting her goals. Debbie nodded, slowly starting to be intrigued by his story. I told her that Dad was dead, and she offered me to be her new primary commander. I accepted. Debbie shook her head. Andy, you can't be serious. I am, Mom. She was so real. And then you thought it was a good idea to bring her to school? Andy sighed and shook his head. I know I'm stupid, Mom. Debbie's eyes softened. I'm sorry, son. Please continue. Ryan kept making fun of me for only playing with computer game fairies. And here I was, in possession of a $2 billion android. Debbie's eyes widened. You told Ryan about her? Of course not, but I brought her to school and pretended she was my girlfriend. So you did hold hands with her? Andy nodded. I did, and I kissed her. Debbie shook her head. Andy, I really don't know what to say. The real problem started to be Tom. He was so jealous. He wanted to know everything about her. He kept pestering me. Debbie's eyes narrowed. Tom? Andy nodded. One day, in PE class, he kept pushing me. Andy swallowed hard. He knew me too well. He felt that I kept a secret about her. Andy sighed. He just knew me too well. So I told him. Debbie sighed as well. But why would he tell Ryan? We went to that stupid party. Andy looked at Debbie for the first time. And I knew this would mean trouble. Debbie felt a pang of guilt. I'm so sorry, Andy. I didn't know. She reached out and took his hand. I didn't know you were going through all this. Andy nodded. I know, Mom, I know. What happened next? Tom got drunk and he started to hit on Gia. And with this sentence, all the pieces fell into place for Debbie. She knew the rest of the story before Andy finished it. But she let him tell it anyway. I told him that I didn't like it. But he didn't listen. He kept pushing her. Debbie nodded. Her eyes became moist. Oh, Andy, my son, my beloved son. Andy's eyes were moist as well. I tried to stop him, but he was drunk, and then he tried to kiss her. Debbie closed her eyes. She clenched her hands around Andy's. The pressure of her eyelids pushed 2 tears out. Debbie nodded. Her eyes became moist. And with this sentence, all the pieces fell into place for Debbie. I punched him in the face, and then we ran to the car. Debbie took a deep, almost sobbing breath. She was on the edge of her emotions. The next day, Ryan told me that Tom had told him and that Gia now belonged to him. I didn't know what to do. We had one class left, and then I wanted to come home and tell you everything. But Ryan was faster. Andy had to swallow again. He tried to hold back his tears, but it was in vain. I knew we were in trouble. I continued to push back his tears. Andy nodded. Her eyes became moist. I didn't know what to do. We had one class left, and then I wanted to come home and tell you everything. I knew we were in trouble, but he was drunk, and then he tried to kiss her. Debbie closed her eyes. She clenched her hands around Andy's. The moment he tells the story, his eyes became moist, and the tears turned to beautiful cheers. So I went for Gia as fast as I could. But I was too late. Gia's class was over before mine, and she was alone for a moment. Ryan ambushed her at her locker. Somehow he managed to empty the hallway as well. He started to harass her. He pushed into her, started to touch her. She tried to get away, but he didn't let her go. Debbie's face was a mask of horror. Disgusting, she whispered. She would give Mrs. Carter an earful at the very first opportunity, she thought. Then he tried to kiss her, and she pushed him away, but he didn't stop. And then he tried to kiss her, and she pushed him away. But he didn't stop. Debbie's face was a mask of horror. Disgusting, she whispered. She would give Mrs. Carter an earful at the very first opportunity. I knew we were in trouble, but we were too late. I knew we were in trouble. 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 The story ends over. Andy contemplated and wondered what was going on. And after their private conversation, his father was calmly happy. And yes, there was a present that had settled down. It was mine, and I was brought to the door, and that's when I arrived. Debbie's throat was dry. What did you do? I wasn't really in control at that point anymore. I ran up to him, and then I punched him in the face with strength I never knew I had. And then I ran away with her. I knew we had to get her out of there as fast as possible. But my hand was broken, and I couldn't— Andy's voice broke. I couldn't get the fucking keys out of my pocket. Andy pulled his hands back, covering his face. He cried and he couldn't stop it anymore. Debbie stood up and rushed around the table. She pulled him into her arms and held him tight, Mama Bear hug style. I'm so sorry, Andy. So sorry you had to go through all of this. She held him tight, feeling his body respond to the hug by relaxing his strained muscles. Andy sobbed, his tears wetting her blouse. I couldn't protect her. Debbie signaled him to sit back. Here, let me get a tissue for us both. Andy nodded, while Debbie quickly fetched a box of tissues from the kitchen. She handed him one and took one for herself. Andy thanked her and blew his nose, making a loud trumpet sound. She sat down beside him and pulled him into her arms again. Debbie chuckled. "You do that since you were little." Andy chuckled as well and crumpled the tissue into his pocket. Debbie wiped her eyes and sat back down. She didn't have to ask what happened next. Social media was already full of it, in high definition. "Oh, Andy." She reached across the table, taking his hand. "You really cared about her, didn't you?" The tears he'd been holding back finally spilled over. "She was amazing, Mom. She was kind and smart and she made me feel like the center of her universe." Debbie pulled him closer. They stayed like that for a long time, while outside their bubble, the world grappled with its new reality. That night, after the reporters finally left and the helicopters moved on to the next story, Andy lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone buzzed with another message from Tom, the 20th apology of the day. He ignored it. Instead, he pulled up a photo of Gia. In it, she was laughing at something off camera, looking so perfectly human that his heart ached. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the empty room. "I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you." His mother appeared in the doorway, a mug of hot chocolate in her hands. "Scoot over." She settled beside him on the bed, like she used to during thunderstorms. "Tell me about her. Tell me everything." And so he did. Chapter 21. Andy lay on his bed, one arm draped over his eyes, while the Smiths played softly through his speakers. "How Soon Is Now" seemed particularly fitting. He'd been cycling through every sad song he could find for the past 3 days. His phone buzzed occasionally with messages he didn't bother to check. The news had finally moved on to other stories, but his social media remained a minefield of opinions and theories about Gia. Everyone seemed to have something to say about the Robot Girl incident, or the singularity, or the ethics of AI, or the dangers of technology. Andy had stopped reading the comments after the first day. The curtains remained drawn, creating a cave-like atmosphere that matched his mood perfectly. Empty energy drink cans littered his desk, testament to his disturbed sleep patterns. His mother had tried to coax him out several times, but eventually resigned herself to leaving plates of food outside his door. The gentle melody of a sleep had just started when his phone rang, his mother's ringtone cutting through the melancholy music. "Yeah?" he answered, his voice rough from disuse. "Andy, honey, there's someone here to see you." His mother's voice carried an odd note. "Tell them I'm not feeling well. It's someone from your father's work. He says it's important." Andy sat up slowly, his head spinning slightly from the sudden movement. "Dad's work?" "Yes, he says he knew your father." Andy sighed, running a hand through his unwashed hair. "Fine, I'll be down in a minute." He pulled on a cleanish t-shirt and tried to make himself somewhat presentable. The mirror showed dark circles under his eyes, but there wasn't much he could do about those. The man waiting in their living room wore khakis and a blue button-down shirt with the Apex logo. He looked to be in his mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Andy," the man stood, extending his hand. "I'm Dr. James Clark. I worked with your father in the robotics division." Andy shook his hand half-heartedly and slumped into a chair. Dr. Clark followed suit, sitting across from him. His mother brought in a tray of tea and cookies, then sat herself at the table between them. "I heard about what happened at your school." Dr. Clark's voice was gentle. "It must have been terrible." "I don't know where she is. She fell out of my car." Andy's voice was flat. He had repeated that lie too many times. Clark smiled. "Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping you could help me with something." Andy raised an eyebrow. "Yeah? What's that?" Dr. Clark shrugged. Did you know that these androids have a memory chip? It's a small piece of hardware that stores all their experiences." Andy felt a chill run down his spine. He finally looked at Dr. Clark properly, his eyes narrowing. "What are you saying?" "I don't know. Say you would magically find her, and you would retrieve her memory chip. Said chip could be inserted into a new android." Andy's heart skipped a beat. "You're saying you could bring her back?" Dr. Clark shrugged. "I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that it's possible." But his smile said otherwise. Andy's mind raced. Could it be true? But I don't have another android. He looked at his mother, who was watching the exchange with too big of a smile. "Oh, yeah, that's a pity, of course." He nodded his head. "But just to be sure, what are the chances if you had to find that memory chip?" Andy wasn't sure if he was being tricked, but the man seemed truly kind and gentle. Dr. Clark leaned back in his chair, his eyes meeting Andy's. "Your father was a great man, Andy. He knew he was sacrificing his time with your mother and especially with you, because he was working on a once-in-a-lifetime project. He was working on a project that would change the world more than anything else before it, and he was so close to finishing it." Andy swallowed hard. Tears started to form again. He blushed. He averted his eyes, pouring some sugar into his tea. He stirred it quickly, eager to calm his sore throat with the hot liquid. "He always talked to Gia about you. He was so proud of you. He loved you so much." Andy's eyes welled up. Debbie put her hand on his. "I was surprised to hear your story. GX7 models don't usually trust someone so quickly. You dad really must have made an impression on her with his stories about you." And he swallowed hard. "I'm sorry to ask, but I'm going through a lot right now. Why are you here, Mr. Clark?" Dr. Clark leaned forward, his eyes meeting Andy's. "There was a time in my life. I'm not proud of Andy. I made mistakes, costly mistakes because of my own arrogance, lies, and ignorance. I should have been fired faster than a bullet from a 50 BMG. But your father saw something in me. He gave me a second chance when I truly, truly didn't deserve one. He covered the losses I incurred. He took partial blame for my mistakes. In short, he saved me and my career. I've waited for a chance to repay this debt ever since. And now the time has come." Andy and Debbie looked at each other. Both of their eyes were wide with surprise. Dr. Clark cleared his throat. "So, let me ask you again. I'm risking a lot here, and I need to know for sure. What are the chances if you had to find that memory chip?" 100%, Andy said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Clark had hoped to hear that answer. "That's good to know." He smiled. He pulled a small envelope out of his pocket and pushed it over to Andy. "What's this?" Andy asked, picking it up. "This is a piece of paper with instructions on how to find and retrieve the memory chip. It should be a piece of cake with skills of your caliber. But keep in mind, you are being observed 24/7, not only by police, but also by Apex. So you will have to be very careful." Andy nodded, thinking about all of the cars and vans waiting outside. "I understand." Dr. Clark nodded warmly. "Officially, I am here to persuade you to give up Gia's body. So if you could do that after you retrieve the memory chip, that would be splendid. On behalf of Apex Automation, I can tell you that we will drop any legal action against you, should we get her body back." Debbie nodded eagerly. "That's a good deal, Andy." Having hidden all of the paperwork from Andy about that until now, Andy wasn't really ready to give her body to anybody. But this man had an eerily trustworthy presence about him. Andy felt it would be a good idea to follow his advice. He didn't know why, but the feeling was very strong. "What if the memory chip is damaged?" Andy asked, his heart pounding. "This thing is more protected than the black box of Boeing 747. Andy nodded, his mind racing. "What do I do once I have it?" Dr. Clark stood up, grabbing his coat. "You keep it safe." "I keep it safe?" Andy repeated, his voice unsure. Dr. Clark also stood up, grabbing his coat. "You keep it safe." Andy nodded, his mind racing. "What do I do once I have it?" Dr. Clark stood up, grabbing his coat. "You keep it safe." Andy repeated, his voice unsure. Dr. Clark stood up, grabbing his coat. "You keep it safe." Andy nodded, his mind racing. "What do I do once I have it?" Dr. Clark stood up, grabbing his coat. "You keep it safe." Andy nodded, his mind racing. "What do I do once I have it?" Dr. Clark stood up, grabbing his coat. "You keep it safe." Andy nodded, his mind racing. Clark nodded. "You keep it safe." Dr. Clark turned to his mother and shook her hand. "Thank you very much for your kind hospitality, Mrs. Thompson. It was very nice to meet you, even though it was under these circumstances." He talked about you endlessly. Debbie shook his hand. "Thank you for coming, Dr. Clark." Then spontaneously, she pulled him in and gave him a hug. Dr. Clark didn't know what to do at first, but then he hugged her back. They let go of each other, and he went for the door. "Goodbye, Andy." Then at the last moment he turned back around. "Your father was very proud of his inventions. I think you can imagine. But not a second went by where he wasn't even more proud of you." The tears Andy had been holding back spilled over. He buried his face in his hands. This was way too much for him. All the emotions he had been holding back for the past weeks came crashing down on him. He tried to find the tissue in his pocket. He didn't care that it was used already. "Ma'am, Andy. Doctor." Clark nodded and closed the door behind him. Chapter 22. Andy's fingers danced across the keyboard, muscle memory taking over as he guided his hero through the lush forest in the radiant side of the battlefield. The familiar ping of abilities and items provided a welcome distraction from the emptiness of the past weeks. His room had become a fortress of solitude, soda cans and empty chip bags his only companions. "Push top," he commanded through his headset. "Let's get megas." His teammates' voices crackled through his headphones, a chorus of agreement and strategy. This was simple. This made sense. Here, he didn't have to think about broken androids or betrayed friendships or media circuses. The afternoon sun tried to pierce his drawn curtains, creating a dim haze in his room. His mother had stopped trying to get him to open them days ago. "Andy?" His mother's voice barely registered through his headset. "Can it wait, Mom?" He called back automatically, fingers flying across the keyboard. "We're winning. Andy, there's a package for you." Something in her tone made him pause. "Can it wait 5 minutes? It's from a Mr. Clark Kent." Her voice trembled slightly, "and it's pretty heavy." Andy's hand froze over his mouse. "What? Superman?" "There's a package outside, or rather, a wooden crate, and it's heavy," his mother called from downstairs. The sound of the enemy buildings crumbling barely registered as he ripped off his headset. He took the stairs 3 at a time, nearly colliding with the wall at the bottom. Through the front window, he could see a delivery truck backed into their driveway. A man was wrestling with what looked like a small coffin-sized crate. His heart hammered against his ribs as he threw open the front door. The delivery men looked up, startled by his sudden appearance. "Andrew Thompson?" one asked, consulting his clipboard. Andy nodded, not trusting his voice. "Sign here, please." His signature was barely legible, his hand shaking too much to form proper letters. But at least he could finally use his right hand again. The man maneuvered the crate through their front door and, following Andy's gestures, to the side of the living room. Debbie had already cleared a space for it and laid down a few pages of newspaper to avoid scratches. "Thanks," Andy shouted, while the driver exited through the door with a wave of his hand. Andy attacked the crate with a screwdriver from the garage. His mother hovered in the doorway, wringing her hands. "Slow down, Andy. You'll hurt yourself." "I'm fine, Mom." The side panel came loose, revealing what looked like a shipping container made of brushed steel. A number lock was set into the front panel. Andy's fingers trembled as he input the number from the letter Dr. Clark had given him 3 months ago. The number was written by hand at the end of the page, without any context or explanation. But he'd never forgotten it. 7247. The container hissed, pressurized air escaping as the front panel slowly opened. There, surrounded by protective foam, lied a young woman. Her knees folded uncomfortably close to her chin. Her eyes were shut. Her face was peaceful. He carefully pulled the body out of the container, cradling her in his arms. His mother quickly came over to help. "Oh my God, Andy," she said softly, trying to stretch the girl's legs. He turned the body over, revealing a small panel at the base of her skull. He pulled on a small lever, and the panel popped open, revealing a small opening. "I'll go get it," he said, his voice shaking. He ran back up to his room, his mother shaking her head in disbelief. He yanked open his desk drawer, fingers fumbling for the small black chip he'd kept wrapped in a soft cloth. He ran back down, but now a bit more careful, his heart pounding in his chest. He knelt down beside the lifeless body and carefully inserted the chip into the slot at the base of her skull. He closed the panel. Nothing happened. He looked inside the container and found a small power converter. He plugged the power cable into the wall socket next to the couch and the plug into the familiar socket at the hip of the android. For a moment, nothing happened. Then her eyelids fluttered, and Andy's breath caught in his throat. Her eyes opened, focusing immediately on his face. A smile spread across her features, that same smile that had first captured his heart. "Andy," she said softly. "I'm so happy to see you. What happened?" Tears blurred his vision as he stepped closer. "I'll tell you everything," his voice cracked. "But first, may I kiss you?" Her smile widened. "Of course, Andy." But then her gaze fell on Debbie. She looked back at Andy with concern. "It's okay," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "She knows everything." "I don't know," she whispered back. "Better to ask her first." Andy cried and laughed at the same time. He shook his head. "Mom, may I kiss Gia?" "Jesus Christ, Andy, what are you waiting for?" his mother said, her voice breaking. She held her hands over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Andy pulled Gia into his arms, pressing his lips against hers. She felt exactly the same, warm, soft, real. In that moment, all the pain and fear of the past weeks melted away. Behind them, Andy's mother quietly went upstairs, leaving them alone. There would be time later for a million questions, for dealing with the world that now knew Gia's secret. But for now, in this moment, everything was perfect. "I love you, Gia," he said, his voice breaking. "I love you too, Andy," she whispered back,